distractions, look straight ahead. I'm getting pushed sideways, off track instead. Look for the moment, nothing is real. I look for the magic when touch turns to feel. They're right in front of me, seems far away. Is there any way I can go home? Here I am again, Lake in Hennepin, thinking about life, the way that things might have been. Any way I can go home.
Hey everybody, this is Richard Sachs, broadcasting live this Saturday, October 10th, 2015, Lost Arts Radio Worldwide. I'm really happy that you could join us either live right now or if you're listening to the archive or you're anywhere else in the world. Thanks for listening to our show. And tonight we have two great guests, as we've been fortunate to have many times. The first one, I've been talking for several weeks with Diane Olive, who wrote two excellent books that you might really want to read both of these if you're interested in not just natural foods and raw foods and health in general, but also health aspects of getting over challenges of Morgellons disease and mites that for some reason often go together. And she really gets into the details of her struggle with that and what it was like overcoming it, which fortunately she did and got her health back. The books are called Think Before You Eat, and the second one is Natural Ways for Healing Mites and Morgellons. And she gives a really great inside picture of what the whole thing is like, the story of how this even happened to her, how easy it is to contract this particular problem, and how she got the inspiration and the specific important details, which fortunately she shares with us tonight on this show, that if you're dealing with this or if you want to be prepared in case you ever have to deal with it, then this could be really valuable information for you. So we're going to have this talk with Diane, and then when we're done with that, we're going to make a natural transition from the Morgellons issue into the larger picture of chemtrails, geoengineering, and these things are connected because there are a lot of people that feel, including some serious researchers, that Morgellons has a strong connection to possibly originating with the geoengineering programs as one of the many nefarious purposes of that program, which I don't even like to call geoengineering because it doesn't deserve the title engineering, but we'll get into that after we finish with Diane. First of all, I want you to be able to really pay attention to the innumerable tips and specific references that she shares with us, and then think about reading her books and going to her website too. Anyway, you'll get all that from the conversation, so let's go talk to Diane right now, and I'll talk to you after that. Welcome, everybody. This is Richard Sachs, broadcasting for Lost Arts Radio. And if you remember, last week we ended with talking to Tasha Lee, and she was telling us about her adventures in natural approaches to curing health issues that she had, and one of which was she was really struggling with symptoms of Morgellons disease. And we didn't get into that too much because we were talking about epilepsy and diabetes and other things, and raw food, which helped her and other people a lot. But wanted to get more focused on the Morgellons and connected issues like mites, which often are accompanying it. And so we're super fortunate to get Diane Olive to come on for us now, who has written a couple of books. One is Think Before You Eat, about aspects of why living foods are essential for healing. And the second one, especially Natural Ways for Healing Mites and Morgellons, is going to address some of the things we didn't have time to get to with Tasha, but I'm sure everybody's interested in. So welcome, Diane. I'm really interested to see what we can get covered tonight.
Hi, Richard. Thank you for inviting me to your show.
Sure. So listen, the way I'd like to start this, because I'm sure our time will go by pretty fast.
Okay.
It's let's go back before you knew anything about these topics to really before your major health problems started, if we can, and kind of get a timeline of how that proceeded, what you did at first as a response, if you were doing the usual medical things and how that went, and then what made you aware of other alternatives that you eventually got into.
Okay, I was on my way to a spiritual retreat, and the woman that I was with from San Diego, California, she started telling me about a new disease, and it really scared me. I didn't want to hear about it. And I wanted to basically cover my ears, wanted her to stop talking about this. I was going for relaxation. And she's telling me about this horrific disease with fibers coming out of people, bugs coming out of people, how much they were suffering. And she was researching it. And I didn't want to hear it. And I got to the retreat, and she asked the spiritual teacher there to bless her with information to help other people. And she told me how excited she was because he blessed her. And I thought, okay, whatever. I didn't believe her. I just couldn't believe there was a disease like that out there.
Yeah.
And a couple of weeks after I was home, I started researching it on the computer, and I realized there really was this new illness. And about 8 weeks later, a woman came into my home. It was the third time I had seen her. She was a friend of a friend who had come to San Diego for healing. She was going to see a healer, and she was sick.
Right.
And she came into my home, and she sat on my cotton couch, and she stood very close to me. She hugged me, and I caught the illness. And I knew that night I caught it. There was this, I felt energetically, I felt like something went in me when I was standing there with her. And I told my husband, I said, something came in from that lady.
Now, did you know?
I took a shower that night.
Diane, did you know that she was sick or what she had?
Yes, I knew she was sick, and we thought she had mites. And I never heard of such a thing.
Okay.
I didn't put the two together, that the woman who was telling me about Morgellons disease, I didn't put them together with mites. So this woman had been camping in Los Angeles, California, and she got an infestation of mites. She had gone to the medical doctors over and over again for 6 months, and they wouldn't tell her anything she had. They never said she had mites. They wouldn't tell her any information. They didn't give her anything. She was just miserable. And she came down for healing to San Diego to see a healer. And so 7 days after I was with her, for 4 hours, I contacted the disease. I contacted the next day, and every day a new symptom came up. And then 7 days, it was a full-blown case of something. I didn't know what the heck it was, but I had started having bites all over me, little tiny bites, and just feeling horrible, and frequencies running through my brain. And that was really odd, just to have a frequency, like a line of a frequency running through your brain.
What is it? Does that mean some kind of sound that you were hearing?
It wasn't a sound. It was something running. It was like something was in my brain running across it, like a computer chip or something weird. I don't know what it was. It was, to this day, when you talk to people who have this disease, we don't understand it.
Okay, but
you have frequencies running.
You're saying it was a frequency, which usually people think of a frequency of sound, but you're talking.
But no, you feel it.
Okay, like a vibration or something.
A vibration that ran across the brain in a line, in a thin line.
Oh, okay.
And I started having these frequencies in my brain. That was the very first symptoms of the disease. And so then I called this woman who gave it to me, and I said to her, what are you doing about it? And she said, I threw away all my furniture, and I had to go buy new clothes, and I had to take off my cotton clothes. It's worse than cotton. And you have to be really clean. And so my husband and I started cleaning everything, and we threw away our couch. We just threw away our bed. We started running up a huge bill. And one year we spent $20,000 on it. We went to the doctors, And the doctor, the very first doctor I said, I brought him all these samples of debris and crap that was coming off of my skin, sand and little specks and fuzzballs was growing on my face. And I brought him the samples, and he looked under a microscope and he said he saw a mite. And he was a doctor who was filling in for my main physician was gone, and he was filling in for him. So I never got to talk to him again. But he said, I think you have mites. I think you should put on some cream for mites and shampoo for mites. And I said, okay. And so I did, and it didn't help. And he goes, and if it continues, he goes, I want you to go see the dermatologist at Kaiser Hospital. And so it continued. I went to the Kaiser Hospital and saw a dermatologist, and she says that I had blocked pores. See, my whole back was completely covered in bites. And I've never had a zit in my life. I don't, I've always eaten very healthy. And it was just covered for my 300 bites on my back. I was covered in bites in my stomach, my neck, my face, back of my legs, especially your knees. That's where they usually go with people who have this disease. And then she said, you have blocked pores. And I just that's ridiculous. And my husband started helping me and putting on oregano oil on my back. We started going on the computer doing research, my son, and it was helping me. And we'd go on and we would look for web pages who were helping people with mites. So I just started researching mites, not Morgellons. And then I talked to the lady at Clean Green, and she goes, mites and Morgellons are the same illness. If mites are untreated, it turns into Morgellons disease. And I freaked out. I had a tantrum. I started crying and laying on the ground. I couldn't believe I had the disease that
Did she tell
my girlfriend had told me about.
Did she tell you what she was talking about? I mean, did you know what Morgellons disease was?
Yes, because remember on the airplane on the way to the retreat, my girlfriend was telling me about this new disease, and I had researched it when I got home.
Okay, and what did
And then I started going back and researching it and seeing all my symptoms were Morgellons. And
okay, so why don't you tell people what you found out it was when you researched it?
Okay, so when you look at Morgellons web pages, there was a web page that had the symptoms of Morgellons, and one of them is white sand and black sand coming out of you. Everybody gets it a little different. Some people just have frequencies. Some people just have this itchy crawling sensation. A lot of times people don't want to call it Morgellons. I call it all Morgellons. It is a stupid name for the disease because it's described as delusional parasite disease. That's the name Morgellons, but it's what we call it, and it's stuck. And it seems to be a name that we all can recognize and get help through that word, because you can Google and search how people are getting better on the internet.
Okay.
And so the symptoms were sores that would just open up on your skin, and the disease was extremely quick. So things would just manifest on your body like in seconds. I couldn't even believe it. I sat there with a tissue box, and I would go through a tissue box in 24 hours. And I just sat there staring at my face and watching the things grow, fuzzballs and sand, and just keep cleaning off my face. And I didn't know what to do, and didn't have any help, and just had to turn to the computer and go through trying to find help. So my book that I wrote, Natural Ways for Healing Mites and Morgellons, it has 8 different people's stories and how they healed. And I have a section where it shows all the different symptoms of the disease so people can figure out if they have it or not.
Right.
Some people, they have bed bugs, and some people, they'll say, hey, you got bed bugs, but it's really this particular mite that they have an infestation of. Okay. And they haven't really connected too much that mites and Morgellons are one and the same illness. As a matter of fact, people get mad about that. They don't think it's true. But how the heck do they know if they got bit by a little tiny bug and it triggered this infection? Now, it's not just the mite triggering the infection. There's also people getting bit by a fly and triggering it. People getting bit by head lice and getting it. So it could be the head lice had the mite. I really don't know. But I'm positive I had a mite because my head started becoming infested with a bug. And it was tiny. I couldn't see it. And it was crawling across my forehead. So when I tried to sleep at night, it would try to crawl into my eyebrows and into my eyes. And you could just feel the movement. It was massive movement. And so finally I put Vaseline on my forehead to block the mite from getting into my eyes.
Yeah.
And so I knew it had to be a bug because I could feel the crawling, and the crawling stopped. It couldn't get into my eyes anymore once I put the Vaseline there.
Sounds like you got trapped in a horror movie, basically.
It was really a horror movie, and I would cry every single day. And that's why I'm helping people. And it kind of reminded me of, when I saw what happened to the Jews, when Hitler, what he did to the Jews.
Uh-huh.
And they were in a concentration camp. And if you could just reach your hand in and help pull somebody out of that concentration camp, if you had the ability to do that, wouldn't you want to do that?
Yeah.
Try to help them. And this, to me, is the same thing. These people are living hell. And it's a horrible hell. You just want to die. You don't want to live.
Well, and especially if you're being told it doesn't exist while you're in it.
Yeah, that that there's nothing wrong with you, and you're just your whole body it's just so much movement in your body that you can't sleep, so you get sleep deprived. It's absolute torture. And on the bottom of my feet, I had little tiny things growing, little white things growing out of my feet. And my husband had to pull them out. He got a tweezers and he pulled them out. That's another thing about this illness when they say, oh, you all are delusional. Well, it's not. How come the husband, the kids, how come they can see the bites in their skin, that they're sores? How can you're seeing that these people have all of these symptoms and they can say it's delusional? That's just crazy.
It must be mass hypnosis, right?
Yeah. So this is a real disease. And it's an infection, some type of infection. I think it's some type of bacteria or fungi gets into the body after you get bit. And there's been some research on it. Some people say it's a spirochete bacteria. They've researched that, and they found that bacteria in the bloodstream of the people who have this illness. And I don't know if you're familiar, Richard, with the spirochete bacteria. It's the one that causes Lyme's disease.
Yeah, it has a corkscrew shape and it digs into you that way. But
yeah, and it has all different types of spirochete bacteria, and some are magnetic. So this disease also is magnetic. So if you put a magnet to the body, it will go towards the magnet. And you can see online people pulling fibers out of their skin with a magnet. Wow. So it's a really odd disease. Yeah. Also, they have found agrobacterium. There's one scientist who was researching to see if there was agrobacterium in the bloodstream, and they had found all patients who had Morgellons disease to have agrobacterium in their bloodstream, and that's from the gene slicing from GMOs. Mm-hmm. So we're not really sure. I just try to find solutions to the problem. No one's really sure where is it coming from. It could be coming from all different angles, all the different things that people are doing to the earth and the sky. Most of the people are getting it outdoors. They're getting it from pulling down a vine. They're getting it from brushing up against a cobweb. They're getting it from laying on the grass. Not many people are getting it from person to person. I don't hear that many stories. But it is blood related, so the people who get it can pass it on in their family only, usually. It's so you just don't know who can catch this and who can't. It's not everybody. So my husband didn't catch it. I didn't allow my daughter to come home from college for 1 year. Mm-hmm. My son lived here. And he did not catch it. So just certain people did. My mother caught it from me. She begged to see me. I refused to see her because I said I was sick, and she was used to seeing me all the time. Once a week I'd visit her, and she was just so upset with me that finally I was weak. I didn't feel good in the 6 months. I said, okay, I'll come and see you. And I said, I'll only go to a restaurant. We'll sit kitty corner. We won't sit too close to each other because I could be contagious. Uh-huh. And she still caught it. And when she caught it, she had the same exact weird symptoms of the vibration running through her brain. Wow. And she described it. I didn't even tell her I had that, and she described it to me. Okay. So that was interesting. But basically, I'm here to help people. I want to try to give them information on how to heal. Mm-hmm. I talk about all different people's stories and how they healed. And it's not necessarily that one thing will heal them, because everybody's immune system is different. So people would get healed. I would try their products that healed them, but they didn't heal me. And, we do have to throw in, our government is very into controlling us, how we heal our body. And so people should see a doctor if they're sick. Mm-hmm. And what I'm talking about here, it might help you, it could help you, it may help you. I have no idea. I've been just giving out information, and it seems to be helping many people. My mom completely healed from this, and she doesn't need any more vitamins or herbs. My immune system isn't as strong as hers. I'm noticing that the older generation's a little stronger than the younger generation. She's 80, I'm 56. So she was able just to take Max GXL, that product, and it completely healed her.
Wow.
She took it for about a year, I think, or a few, I'm not sure. Then she just stopped taking it, and she's fine. I still take a lot of vitamins and herbs, but I'll get into that. But one of the things that the people need to know is that it's such an odd illness. I've never seen anything like this, but it infects the air of the home. It infects the furniture. It infects the clothes. It gets into the skin. It gets into the hair. It gets into your bottom and the hairline in your bottom too, which makes you itchy and crawly. It's horrible. The body starts changing. It starts turning into like a petri dish, and it's as if your body can breed new bugs. And I've talked to people who told me they had new variety of bugs with a ladybug with golden wings on it. And they brought it to the medical doctor, and the doctor just took it and never said anything, you know. But new species are being birthed out of these human people, and it's terrible. And so I'm trying to show people what to do. And things like oregano oil is very powerful. You have to be careful online. Some of them are too weak. You can't buy 100% oregano oil. It's too concentrated for the body. It has to be mixed with olive oil, 50-50 or 60% olive oil. And then it can be put onto the skin. And you can put it onto the places where the sores are, where you're having all the problem. And that really helps them. They also can put on a cream. There's many different creams out there. Some people are telling me that these sulfur creams are helping. I don't know much about them, but I've heard they help. But the cream that helped me so much was the NM Soothing Cream that Gene, from Gene's All Natural Products, he made that. And that's G like in God, GENES, All Natural Products. So he made a cream that has 19 essential oils. And when I first started putting the cream on, I was in shock. I couldn't believe the debris that was coming out of my skin. So it was cleansing me. And are you still there?
Yeah, I'm listening.
Okay. Yeah, it was cleansing me, and I thought something was wrong with the cream, and then I called up Gene and said, "What's going on here?" And it was just cleansing my skin. It was pulling out the debris that was underneath the skin. So I love that cream, and the natural oils helped heal my skin. I kept putting it on my skin for months. And after about 3 months of slapping it on my back, I just kept slapping that on and oregano oil. And I had this clear jelly come out of my skin like a biofilm. I wasn't quite sure what the heck it was. But once that clear jelly came out of the back of my skin, I started to feel much better. I stopped all the itchy crawling sensation on my back. So there's some type of bacteria that's causing this.
Wow.
I did see some type of bug in my nose that, I had to pull out bugs out of my nose with a tweezer. It was so disgusting. I'm a girl. It was like so gross and disgusting. I don't watch horror shows, and this was, like you said, it was like a horror movie. And but I just kept learning and kept interviewing people, talking to them, trying to figure it out. I learned a lot from Gene. He was really nice to me. He talked to me a long time on the phone. The Cedarside Company, they were nice to me, and they taught me how to fog. My husband started to fog my home. At the end, I started using things to treat the air. I used a small little cedar air diffuser from Aroma Ace. They have a really nice waterless. It doesn't have water in it. It just is a dry diffusing. And I really love that little machine. I would put pure mountain cedar oil in it. It's a cedar, 100% cedar oil. I would put that in there. You can't use Texas. It makes you feel jittery. You can use Virginia cedar oil, but the mountain cedar oil, that particular company, they made it extremely well for this little machine. They did it on purpose. They made it just for that diffuser. And that diffuser goes down to 1 micron. So what they taught me is that it helped coat the breathing mechanism of the mite, and it also was antibacterial, antifungus, antioxidant. So it put that out in the air, and I would breathe it in, and it helped my lungs. I just felt so much better. I used to have it on 24/7. It would be good for hospitals. We're having a lot of infections being passed around the hospitals. And if they would start using natural oils in the hospitals, that would really help.
Right.
They should be doing diffusing so they don't keep passing these infections on. And they should, around their instruments, they could be using diffusing of natural oils. I also use the menthol crystals. So I have a little light. It's very inexpensive. It's $17 for these little aroma lights that have a little glass top on it. And I would put menthol crystals. They're derived from peppermint. And I would take the peppermint, the menthol crystals, I put it into the little glass top like a tablespoon. And then I'd turn the light on and it would diffuse it into the air of the room. And it's pretty strong. It smells like peppermint, and it's very, very strong. So I don't suggest breathing that in 24/7. That's something you could treat the bedrooms in the daytime, and then open the windows when you have to go to bed. And then in the nighttime, you can treat your living room, your family room area, and then shut off that part of the room. And that really helped. I started using that at the end. It was easier than the fogging because I was able to be in my home. So we ran up a huge bill because we were fogging the house and we'd leave it overnight and go to a hotel. And the fogger and the fog, it's very expensive. But if people have the money to buy that, it's a nice product. But I ended up using the menthol crystal diffusing and the cedar ear diffusing, and I would alternate with them. And then I just started doing it every other day, then every third day, and every fourth day, then once a week. I just started spacing it out. So I didn't do an overkill. But I really thought the bacteria had gotten into the air of my home. I'm positive. I have black granite kitchen counters. And you could see the debris landing on the counters. And my husband can see it. I mean, it was there. And we started learning that the Dyson vacuum animal had a really good HEPA filter. And we started vacuuming the floors because of my feet, getting them infected with little tiny debris coming out of my feet and sores on the bottom of my feet. So we started to do a lot of vacuuming, and he would clean out the vacuum bag and he would actually get it into his nose. And he would feel like there was a mite or a bug in his nose. And he would use the clean green. We'd put that in a spray bottle and dilute it, and he would spray that into his nose to clean it. And that's some type of enzyme. It's a natural product that helped us as well. We cleaned the duct vent on the dryer because you just want to stay really sterile and not to keep passing this bacteria, bug, whatever it is. No one really knows. We don't want to keep passing it around. So you have to keep clean.
Did your husband avoid getting it that way?
Well, his immune system, he just didn't get it. He would just scrub and take a shower, and sometimes he'd feel crawly. After a while, we started to learn the protocol. So he had gone down to Florida and stayed in a hotel room in Florida. It's big in Florida. I get a lot of phone calls from Florida. And he stayed in a hotel that was infested with the room. He came home because I am infested with something, a bug. He goes, I feel it from head to toe. And so he knew the protocol. We stripped his clothes off in the garage. We used the NM Orange Clean from Gene's All Natural Products, or you can use PCO from Cedar Side. That's a cedar cleaner, and the other one's an orange cleaner. And we just would put it into the laundry detergent, and we'd wash the clothes. And then he scrubbed his skin. We had soap, and we have a hand glove that we'd scrub our skin with, and a soap for scabies, or for mites. And then he would be fine. He'd spray and clean his nose, and he was fine. But for me, it was a big problem to get healthy again. Even after I started finding products, I went to Dr. Harper, and he was a good help. He pointed me more in the right direction. I went to see him once. But, everything is so costly. He was $300 an hour, and I was in there for 2 hours, and I ended up with a $600 bill plus $200 in products. I mean, my husband's a school teacher. I wasn't working a job, and to come up with $800 in one day, it was just crazy, the expense of this illness. And I feel real sorry for the people. I was hoping maybe one day somebody would have a nonprofit that would pay for products, not for research. I'm not into research. You see how much cancer, they're always researching cancer. I'm just not into research anymore. It just doesn't get anybody anywhere. I'm into what are the solutions? What are the products to get people better from cancer? What are the products to get people better from Morgellons? We need to look in the positive and how to help people and put our money there to pay for products to help them so they can get better. A lot of people have absolutely no money to heal themselves, and that's real hard. I just have to tell them, you got to have garlic. You have cilantro. Is a good cleanser of the body. Garlic is really good for this illness. And I try to walk them through how to clean their house. And, people use vinegar. They use things that are borax in their laundry. They use things that are cheaper to help them. But one of the things that I did that was interesting is I took a plastic bin with a plastic lid, like you store your Christmas ornaments in, and things that you store in the garage. And I take bags of menthol crystals, breathable bags, and I put the menthol crystals in there. And then after I washed my clothes, I would take the clothes and put it in these bins. And that was such a huge help because the menthol crystals stopped this, whatever this bacteria is, it stopped it from growing. And I put the menthol crystals bags, I put them in every drawer, in my shelves, everywhere.
Where do you get those, and how do you get them into the bags?
Jean's All Natural Products had that product. And also you can get it on Amazon. You can find it all over the internet, menthol crystals.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And they all seem to be, I bought them from all different companies, and they all seem to be great. They all worked.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and so that's a huge plus for people to know about, to keep bins. And I took a bin and I put it under the bed. I got a shorter bin for there. And then my sweaters and my coats, I didn't have to keep washing them every time. I would put them in these bins. There was something was in the clothes, and even though I would wash with the orange and the cedar, it still was so difficult to get it out of the clothes. And one of the hardest things was to get it out of the car. It was almost impossible. It was so infested in my car. And so I started using menthol crystals in my car. I just take a bag of menthol crystals, and I take like an old half-pint container of sour cream, the old container, and that was empty. And I would throw the menthol crystals in there so when the sun would hit the car. So in the summertime, it worked great. Yeah. In the wintertime, it seemed like the bug came back. And so I just kept putting it every summer, and finally it just went out of my car.
Okay.
So that was another way to treat the car. So I would get all clean and showered and feel real good, and then I'd get in my car and I would come out just crying because I would be so infested with bugs in the beginning. Wow. And then once I learned how to treat the car, this is why the people are having such a hard time getting better, because they reinfect themselves.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I believe strongly whoever has this too, they got to treat the air of their home. They have to treat their clothes, and maybe they might have to change out their couch if they can't spray it enough and get it clean. If they sit on their couch and they feel like something's crawling on them, then they have to get rid of their couch.
So how much of that can you fight with the menthol crystals?
Oh, you mean the furniture?
Yeah.
Well, not, it's really difficult. You could put it in the air, so maybe it would treat the top of the couch, but then the cushions would have to be turned.
Okay.
And maybe you can take big, huge plastic bags and put the cushions into the plastic bags with menthol crystals. We started doing that at the end. We'd take the pillows from the couch and put it into plastic containers and try to kill it.
Yeah, but then you've got the body of the couch, the frame and everything that's still
Yeah, so we'd spray it, we'd fog it.
Okay.
And we had a brand new couch, and we had spent a lot of money on it, so we had to protect that couch because we didn't want it to get damaged again. And one of the things we did for the bed, instead of throwing your bed out, we learned that if you take a plastic liner, so like the ones for the elderly people use for urinating, so they don't urinate on the mattress. So it's a solid plastic, and you would put that all around the mattress, and then you tape up the zipper. And that way you could use your bed still, because the mattress would get infested with this. Right. And one of the odd things about the illness is that I would wake up in the morning and I would look at the top of my bed after I had washed my bedspread every single day. But somehow the energy field of my body was creating this disease. You could see debris on the top of my bedspread. It wasn't just me, so it wasn't crazy. Like, you could see it. I could photograph it. There was debris on top of my bed. So I felt like it got into the energy field of my body. It actually took my energy field down. And you would never know you have an energy field around you. When you're normal and healthy, you don't realize that. But when an energy field around your body is taken down, and when you walk out in the backyard, you feel like bugs are attracted to you, as if my body was putting a call out to bugs.
Okay.
And all of a sudden, like bugs were landing. It just felt really weird. I'd go outside and I'd feel horrible. And the sun, when I'd sit out in the sun, I'd go into excruciating pain.
Mm-hmm.
And who the heck knows, why that is. But somehow the sun would affect this illness too, where you just would go into a lot of pain when the sun hit you. And then once I started getting healthy again, that just went away. And the whole bug thing of being attracted to me went away. And that's why the people sound crazy, because they'll be like, I went in the store and I felt like there's bugs in the store. And it's electromagnetic fields. So if the store has a lot of electricity in it, so our bodies start becoming sensitive to electromagnetic fields. So if we're around a computer, we'll feel worse. Or we're around cell phones, we'll feel worse. So your whole immune system is shot out. And I felt like I was going to die, but luckily, I had to sink or swim, and I just kept calling people on the phone. And Gene was a big help, because he said, you got to treat 4 things. I'm like, okay. So I started there, and then I just started to research more. I started, the turning point was Max GXL. Richard Coons, he was advertising about it on the computer, and he had this illness too. And he started using amino acids. And somehow amino acids help this illness. And I think it's because the DNA gets damaged. And the bacteria gets into your DNA and it starts altering your DNA. So each of my hair on my head, you could see little tiny lines growing out of my hair.
Wow.
And there's goop, like a jelly coming out of my scalp. And so anyways, I started using the tea tree oil shampoo, or you can use an orange shampoo. And you want not just it's the outer rind of the orange, delaminin. You want that part in the orange, not just the orange oil. So that helped me a lot for my hair. And I would soak in oregano oil. I would take and cut my oregano oil from the health food store. I'd cut it at 50% more with olive oil, because if it gets in your eyes, it really stings, and it just is a really hard product to work with. And I chopped all my hair off. I had to just take scissors and chop it all off. It was long, and I had to, because I couldn't go to the hairdresser. I was so afraid of infecting somebody. When somebody came into my home and infected me, I wasn't about to go to anybody else's places and infect them. So I just chopped all my hair off, and I would soak my hair in oregano oil. I would take it and cut it with more olive oil, and I'd soak it all night. And then the next day I would shampoo it out, because I didn't like the smell of oregano oil all the time. So then the next day I would soak in the bathtub. I would take salt, Himalayan salt, or just a high salt content, and I would put a ton of salt in my bathtub, and I would use like a vegetable rinse, Sunrider International, their vegetable rinse. I used that in the bathtub. I just needed something extra to kill the bacteria. But there's other products you can use. You can use the NM Orange Cleaner from Jeans. You can use that product. You can use any type of natural oil, as long as it doesn't sting. So that's the thing, is when your pores are open, you're taking a bath. But you want something else. The Opaline Dryoxy, they made a new product that you can put in your bathtub that helps put oxygen. You just don't want to spread the illness, so you don't want to spread it from one part of your body to the other. So you have to be careful. And there's soaps out there, and you just want to really scrub your skin and get it off. And I noticed that if I took a bath and I soaked for 1 hour, that really helped me. The bath somehow pull out this bacteria would go out of the body into the water. So that helped a lot. And a lot of the pain would go away out of my feet, and the frequency started leaving. And when I'd sit in there for 1 hour, I would take the orange cleaner from Jeans, and I would soak that in my scalp. I'd add water to it and just soak it into my scalp and sit there for 1 hour. And the baths were unbelievable for helping me. I also did the foot baths, the ionic foot baths, and that was a big help too. That really helped pull out debris out of my body as well.
What were you putting in the water for that?
Salt.
Okay.
They put salt in. My girlfriend helped me. She'd come over and give me foot baths.
Yeah.
And that puts electrical frequency into your body to help clean the body. And that was a huge help. On the internet, they make fun of that tool, but I really believe strongly. After I got better, I went and had colonics, and I realized that my first colonic that there was still bacteria in me because the bowels smelled. So that was one of the first symptoms of the illness. My bowels smelled wicked.
Right.
I'd never smelled anything like it. So it had infected me from head to toe. It went into my bones. I could feel it in my bones. It went everywhere. And it was so fast growing. It was unbelievable. And so I went for colonics, and that helped pull out more of the debris that was creating the illness. So that was really good for me. But, you have to be careful. You want to wait till you get better because you don't want to infect people with the illness. So I did that. I started taking more vitamins and herbs. I started taking something for my thyroid because people said that my body just wasn't working properly, that my thyroid, my liver function, my gallbladder function, that things weren't working right, and my digestive system wasn't working right. So that I really needed to strengthen these systems, and that would really help me. So I started taking a product called Thyroid by Now. The product is from Now Company, and that has seaweed in it. It has some vitamins. It has copper. So I thought that product helped me. I took this product called Cat's Claw.
Yeah.
And one of the first people who suggested it to me in the book, I write about her, Mary, and she had told me to take a liquid cat's claw, but it didn't do a lick. Okay. But when I started this cat's claw extract from Now Company, it was much stronger. So my body just needed something stronger than what her body needed.
You said it was an extract. Was it liquid, or were you talking about cat?
No, this is powder. The company Now creates a powder. Okay. It's in a capsule. Yeah. I don't like to swallow vitamins or herbs, so I went and I opened up the capsules, and then I would just drink it down. And when I went to 2 capsules, that's when my whole itchy crawling sensation on the top of my head went away. And you can imagine most of the people I talk to, they can't work. I mean, everything just ends, or life just ends. And a lot of the husbands are divorcing the wives because they don't believe them.
Wow.
It's crazy. Yeah. And so these people are really getting desperate. They have no means of support.
Oh, yeah.
And so they're happy to find me because I'll talk to them. I'll sit there with them and let them cry on the phone. But not just women are crying, it's men too. Men call me up crying.
Right.
And they're hysterical because they're crawling with bugs.
Yeah.
And so I've been very successful with helping them and walking them through. Not everybody, but I would say 80% of the people get better. And some people get completely better, like my mom, where they don't even need any more products.
Yeah.
But most of the people, this bacteria is like Lyme's disease, where it sits in your cells and it's hard to completely recover. So the people really need to stay on a natural program of organic foods, no GMOs, and keep taking the vitamins. If you've taken Cat's Claw, Max GXL, or amino acids, glutathione by Gerald's a good one.
Yeah.
The product I like, Core Artemisia Blend, is for parasites. It has all these different black walnut, wormwood. It has all these different parasite herbs so that people can kill some of the bacteria and the parasites that are inside of them. And I have to continue taking them or the disease will come back. So it's similar to Lyme's disease. And Lyme's is the spirochete, and they found that Morgellons also is a spirochete bacteria.
So what did you?
And the Holman Foundation, there's a research paper done there on the that was done by a doctor. But I wanted to tell you that what the paper was. But there was a scientist who researched this, and they found that it was a spirochete bacteria. So but you can find more information on the Holman Foundation. They're raising money to study this. It was a chemical and light microscopic study by a veterinarian, Marianne Middelveen, and a Dr. Raphael Stricker.
Okay.
Hopefully I'm pronouncing their names correctly. Anyways, they published in the Journal of Clinical and Experimental Dermatology, and what they were researching is the infection with the cows, the bovine virus.
Yeah.
And they found similarities between Morgellons and this disease that are affecting the cows. And because they found fibers in the cow and the feet of the cow.
Okay.
So they were looking at that, and they did find some similarities.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was interesting. But eventually they'll figure this out. But in the meantime, we'll just keep trying to give information to people to help them, educate them on what to do to help themselves.
So what did you find out about the effect of different kinds of food? Because you said you were talking about non-GMO food, organic food, and stuff.
Yes. Okay. Well, I had interviewed a man who was standing outside of the health food store, and he was trying to get people to sign his petition. And he was telling me that he had gotten the Morgellons disease, and his father and him had fibers coming out of them, and his son died. And that when they stopped eating the GMO foods, that's all they did, he said, and the disease went away. Now, for my body, if I ate GMO foods, it got far worse. The disease became worse, and the itching, crawling sensation became worse. So I just took it out of my diet. And I was mainly eating only organic, but I would eat sometimes. My husband had corn that wasn't GMO, that was GMO, and I would eat that, and I noticed symptoms of the disease, so I stopped eating the corn.
Okay.
And I don't know when you read my book, if you remember the pellagra disease. That was in when they started changing the corn flour. They did something to the corn flour. They stopped using lime when they dried it.
Yeah.
And that was the Native American Indians. They used lime, but we stopped doing that, and it created a skin disease. And you can go online and you can find pictures of that pellagra disease. And all they did was add vitamins back into the person's diet, and that disease went away.
Okay.
And it's a skin disease. So if you get a bacteria or something in you that depletes you of nutrients, then you're going to get skin infections. Yeah.
Yeah.
So on the line you can find all sorts of different things that help people. For instance, infrared light. So there's an infrared heating pad that people can use that I liked. And Dr. Staninger, she was helping people with this disease in the past, and she recommended a particular infrared light heating pad. That really helped me. When you get this disease, your body temperature drops. Almost everybody across the board, our body temperature drops.
Okay.
And I found it interesting because that's what happened to the bats. You know how the caves where the bats were just dying?
Yeah.
They couldn't stabilize their temperature. So with this illness too, you couldn't stabilize your temperature. You wake up and dripping. Just my clothes, my pajamas would just be dripping in sweat.
Wow.
And then I would be freezing all the time. So my body was just, my temperature was so unstable. But when I started using the infrared light heating pad, I just sit for 1 hour. I'd make myself sit for 1 hour a day, like every single day for 1 year, and it put the warmth back in my body, and I stopped having all the cold hands, cold feet. The problem went away. And so there's different people I write about, like Ramona from Healing Grapevine. She used willard water. She had Dr. Stadinger help her heal and teach her different things, ways of getting better, but willard water helped her. I tried the willard water, and it was really nice too. Gordon Stomp, I don't know if you read that chapter on Gordon Stomp. He was a male nurse who contacted this disease from his child, and from head lice, I think it was. And the whole family, the wife, him, they all got it.
Okay.
And he was a male nurse for 30 years, and then he started to put together enzymes, look underneath a microscope to figure out what enzymes healed it. So I strongly believe in using enzymes to heal the body. I never did. I didn't know much about enzymes. I tried Gordon's products. For whatever reason, my body didn't do well with some of the products other people took. Some people took HCl, hydrochloric acid. I could not take that. It irritated my stomach lining and my intestines, and enzymes used to irritate my stomach lining and my intestines. I'm able to use enzymes now. Okay. But back then, this was 4 years ago. Yeah. So I've been healthy and strong and well for 3 years now.
All right.
And none of this has come back, because that's one of the complaints that people had, is that the disease would come back. They'd get better for a year and then it'd come back. But it has not come back for me. Once a year, I treat the air. I'm just really careful what I do and where I go, and I try not to be around real dirty places. I don't do well now. Around a lot of dust. It really bothers me, so I'm very sensitive to mites now. The bees are getting mites.
Yeah, I heard that, right.
And then they're getting co-infections. So I think it's similar to what's happening with us. We're getting a tiny microscopic mite that you need a magnifying glass of 300 times just to see it. And then we're getting all these different infections to go with the bites. And people will say, "Oh, it wasn't a bite." Well, how the heck do you know that?
Yeah.
You can't see it. So how would you know? So I really believe it starts with a bug bite. and then starts its infection. Dr. Dan Harper was a big help, and he taught me different things to use and told me to use the amino acids for healing. And I thought because I was a vegetarian that maybe that was why I was depleted in amino acids, but it wasn't. Everybody they were meat eaters, they actually would take amino acids and it would help strengthen their bodies as well. Let's see. So I just started using some good acidophilises too. Fluorobiotics. I really like that. That helped me gain my weight back. Everyone who usually gets this, we drop our weight, our body weight. I think I dropped down to around 92 pounds, 95 pounds, and I was normally 105. And so once I started using the fluorobiotics, that helped me from the company, The Doctor Within. That helped me get better.
Oh, yeah.
I started using, one of the products I used was NutriSilver. He advertises a lot online, and that NutriSilver really helped me. I used more in the beginning because I didn't know how to strengthen my immune system. Basically, I think these products like NutriSilver and MMS, they basically target the bacteria that's creating the disease. And so you're able to function, but they don't strengthen your immune system. So the amino acids and the cat's claw and other products, thyroid product, those things really help strengthen my body and made me feel better. But I used the MMS for 7 months. Miracle Mineral Solution. Our government does not want us to be using this product.
Yeah.
I was fine with it. I don't understand it. It heals malaria in 24 hours.
Well, that could be the reason.
Yes. Yeah, so it's very strange. But I used that for 7 months. But after 7 months, my body couldn't stand it anymore. I could not take it anymore. I was taking large amounts of it, and I had to stop it. And so that's when I started finding all these other vitamins and herbs, and they really helped me. And I've been taking those for about 3 years now, and I feel good. I feel real good on them. I found that I couldn't find any side effects from them. So it looks like I could take them the rest of my life. I'll be just fine.
What point did you start actually trying to help other people with the same thing?
Well, it just happened naturally because my girlfriends knew that I had the disease. So I think in my 8th month, I wasn't better yet, and I would tell them the things I was using, like MMS or NutriSilver, and so then they would try the products I was on. But one of my girlfriends, she knew I had it, and she knew a friend of hers had contacted it, and she was in Utah. She had gone into the emergency in the hospital, and they wouldn't recognize that she had anything wrong with her. And then she gave it to her mother, and they were just hysterical, crying, calling me up. And I tried to help them with whatever I knew, whatever tools I knew. And then at the point when I started finding glutathione, so glutathione helps this illness, they started doing glutathione injections at the medical doctor's office, and that started to strengthen their immune system, and they started getting better. And I think she started using an antibiotic too. So I do have a chapter on doctors, and I do have a couple antibiotics in there that people were taking to help themselves. And the start of the chapter is about a medical doctor who contacted the illness and had fibers coming out of himself, and who said, I would never believe in any of this if I hadn't seen it myself.
Yeah,
Did you remember reading that?
It would be really interesting to me to know why he wouldn't believe it, even before, if he saw the symptoms like you would have seen them. I don't understand that.
I don't understand it either. Yeah, if you see symptoms, you know there's something wrong. And then if you see thousands of people having the same symptoms, I mean, we have a plague, and no one's doing a jack about it. It's terrible.
Yeah, interesting.
And, some of the fibers that are coming out of people, I have people calling me up and saying I have hot pink fibers coming out of me. They have fluorescent fibers coming out of me. Yeah. And if you go on the computer and you Google fluorescent glowing pigs, you can see gene slicing where they've done things and altered the pig's DNA.
Right.
And you can see pigs that glow in the dark.
Yeah.
And so I think everything's getting mixed up. We've used too much GMOs, and we've damaged the immune system. And now we're mixing with other things in our society. We're touching things, and things are just mixing with our DNA. That's all I can figure. I mean, people think it's nanotechnology. Dr. Staninger believes strongly that it's nanotechnology, and it's possible. I mean, you start messing around and creating things. Everything here has a flow. It's all created by the Lord, and it all has an ebb and a flow. And You can't just start messing around with things here.
Yeah.
It's all designed perfectly. And you look at a river that runs and how it doesn't get polluted. And we have a little fountain in our backyard, and you see how polluted it gets.
Yeah.
But everything out there is designed, and the rain and the clouds, and it's all perfect. And we're messing with it, and we're creating seeds that don't self-replicate. We can't do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a design. And it will definitely have bounce back on you when you try to mess with it.
Well, that's
something that...
And it's not the general population that's doing that. It's a very small group, relatively speaking. So, to feel some kind of collective social guilt is not 100% accurate, because a lot of people are just accepting this because science is giving to them, and it must be wonderful, right?
Right, and scientists are probably one of the most dangerous members of our society, because they are creating things that are probably for war, and they're using it on, experimenting on people.
Yeah.
And you can't do that. They have to be conscious. Everybody has to start being conscious here, and everybody's about money. Like, I would love to see our government, no one's, have the president and no one gets a salary, have the Congress, nobody gets a salary, nobody gets retirement. It's a voluntary position. How about that? What do you think of that?
Yeah, that would be amazing. It would definitely be.
Don't you think that we have some better people?
Yeah, well, yeah, you'd have to take out you'd have to take out the promises of future $1 million jobs and all this kind of stuff. And special vacations, all of that would have to, all bribes and all blackmail and all threats would have to stop.
Yeah. So if everyone could stop being about money, take a deep breath, and just be about the people, loving the people. Let's get back to our principles.
Yeah.
And helping, because everything is one here. So whatever you do to man to make money, you're going to do it to yourself, and your own children are going to suffer.
Yeah.
So we got to all be strong and just say, everybody be whistleblowers and just say no more.
Yeah.
We're not doing it anymore. Let's just help the people.
Yeah.
And stop it. Even if we have to lose our jobs, that this world is about being strong. And I think there's a lot more to this world than what we see. There's a lot of problems here, and it's for us to conquer them, to realize that we're divine and that we can master this world by practicing love and forgiveness and helping others. That's why we come here. But everybody's forgetting why we're here.
Yeah, I completely agree.
So things like hemp seed powder, I like that. It has a lot of 20 amino acids in it.
Mm-hmm.
That's real good. People like moringa. It has a lot of vitamins in it: A, C, B6, niacin, calcium, zinc, magnesium. So that's a real good product. Maca, Dr. Staninger, she liked the maca product. It has iodine, calcium, selenium, enzymes, minerals. So there's a lot of really wonderful products that people can start adding to their diet and to get better. Some people, there's a lot of people who suggest all sorts of strange diets out there, like no fruit. And I just don't like those. Fruit is enzymes. You want to do food combining and only eat fruit in the morning and only, a small amount, because this illness doesn't do well with sugars and starches. So you don't want to eat a lot of sugar and starch, because it will make the illness 1,000 times worse. It will grow super quick.
Okay.
So you want to eat really healthy, lots of salad, lots of enzymes in your food, blended green drinks, and put a banana in there, put some romaine lettuce, put some kale, and drink it. Greens do really well with this. Garlic, I said garlic already. So one of the products that Dr. Harper suggested was Saccharomyces boulardii, and that was a really good product. I loved it. It helps with diarrhea. It helps with hives, herpes, Crohn's disease, infections, and that was one I used as well.
Okay.
Then I write a chapter on with Caroline Carter. She's a trained pharmacist, and she didn't believe in alternative medicine. She was worked for the pharmacies, and then she realized how corrupt it was, and it was all about people making money and not really healing them, that she decided to study and become a holistic, natural doctor. So she she became a complementary and alternative medicine physician, and she is in Cyprus, and she caught this illness from brushing up against a cobweb. and got really sick, and she was literally dying. She could only drink through a straw. Her face is hardened up, and you can see the pictures in my book of how she looked before and after when she got better. But she got better really strange, a really unusual way that I've ever heard. She got better by a book called The Healing Codes by Alex Lloyd, and it has a positive prayer in there that you keep saying over and over again, asking God to help guide your mind to help you get better. And the prayer is in that book, so you can look it up and you can read his book and understand why he wrote the book and what it's about. But she also got better by crystal healing with putting, you can put them on your body. Mm-hmm. She got better with energy healing, and that's how she healed herself. So, there's all different ways that people can heal themselves. I have some prayer. I have a prayer in there by Paramahansa Yogananda to help heal. Mm-hmm. That's in one of the chapters. There's natural oils. There's lavender is like an insect repellent. So that's a nice little oil that you can put on your body. Peppermint oil you can put on your stomach for upset stomach, antibacteria, and just to stay positive that you can persevere and make it through this illness. I read the books, Gary Renard's books, The Disappearance of the Universe and Your Immortal Reality, and I started reading Course in Miracles, and it teaches all about forgiveness and love. And I don't know what it was about the books, but it calmed me down because I was a mess. I was up all night, and I would get those books out and I read them over and over, and they just helped me become more peaceful and to realize that I was going to be okay. So just the message for the people is this: you're going to be okay, that there's a lot of help. We're all trying to help you, and hang in there. You can do this, because people are committing suicide from it. So, there's a lot of products out there. I think the cure for Morgellons, I think if you look that up, there's a wait list. That the man there is trying to help people, and he was raising money to try to help people with the disease. The cure for Morgellons, it's a webpage.
Oh, okay.
He has a wait list, and he had people who were, so if somebody can try to help them, people to try to help raise money to help these people, that would be really good. So that's about it. Any other questions you would like for me?
Well, what did you were talking about the different foods and that it's important not to eat GMO food and to get organic stuff as much as you can. What did you find about within organic, what did you find the difference to be, if any, between these people eating raw versus cooked food?
With this particular disease, there wasn't, salads are good for you, but these people are losing a lot of weight. Yeah. And they need some cooked food. Okay. To keep their weight on. Okay. So steamed vegetables, to have some steamed vegetables would be good for them, actually. Okay. I am really into enzymes, but when you're sick and all of a sudden someone says, hey, raw food is great for you, and all of a sudden you go on a raw food diet, you're going to lose more weight, and your body starts rebuilding. So you always want to do anything that's new. You want to do it slowly. Right. So you add, a piece of fruit, you add a salad, and you slowly go and change your diet. When I first became a vegetarian, it was 20 years ago, and I had gotten really sick 20 years ago, and people told me if you become a vegetarian, you become healthier faster, and if you eat raw food. So I did. I jumped right into it, and I literally went into shakes because I withdrew from the meat because I was on a high protein diet, and I went into this no protein, where there's protein in your fruits and your vegetables, there's plenty for you to live on. I've been eating protein just from my fruits and vegetables for 20 years, and I've been just fine. I was healthy and strong until that lady came into my home. I had nothing wrong with me. Yeah. So I believe, definitely have to eat some raw food, some salads if you can. If your digestion doesn't work properly, then you're going to have to take and make drinks, and you take the salad and you blend it and you put ginger with it. Yeah. And ginger will help you digest the raw food. Okay. Now, what about the juices versus the blended food? Yeah, juice would be good for them, but even if your stomach isn't working right, even that will start. You still need ginger. You should put ginger into the juice, right, to help you digest the juice. Right. And that would be a big help to them, ginger. So,
Are you spending a lot of time now talking to people that are calling you from all over the place?
Yes, I'm getting calls from all over, and I'm spending like an hour a day going through this. So I think, Richard, this will be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
What we just went through, and people can learn from this. And I'll keep sending this over to them. One more thing I forgot to discuss is your eyes and your ears. See, your body gets so infested, you don't know what to do.
Right.
So, like for my eyes, I had to clean my eyes. I had to go to the pharmacy and get an eye cup. So you get an eye cup, and then I would put in. There's something on Jean's page. It's Sambuca blend by Energetics. It's you can put 1 drop in, and you can clean your eyes. It has herbs. Just a liquid, herbs, real gentle. Yeah. So you have to clean your eyes because it gets into your eyes, and then it got into my ears, and I'd use the Tiger Balm for my ears. I would take a little Tiger Balm from Sunrider International, and I would take it on my finger, and I wipe it into my ear, and I'd use the Cali tea and the Fortune Delight tea and the Quinary from Sunrider, and that was a big help too.
Okay.
Not huge, but it definitely strengthened my immune system a little bit. It wasn't until I had the products Max GXL, Cora Magia Blend, Cat's Claw, Opaline Dry Oxy, Thyroid, Glutathione by Gerald. When I started all of these products, that's really when my immune system jump-started and started working properly again.
Do you want to mention slowly a few of the sources that, of the things that you've been recommending so that people can listen to the archive and don't necessarily have to keep calling you and say, where did you say you could get this particular thing? Just to list a few of the common ones that you've been referring to all through.
Okay, so like Cat's Claw extract by now, you can go to any health food store and you can go buy it. It's cheap. It's like $13 or $12 in the health food store.
And that's capsules, right?
Yes, Cat's Claw extract by now. Only that particular company do I like. There's a ton of Cat's Claw out there, but that one worked the best for my body.
Okay.
Everybody's body's different, so they can try a different one, but that one's the one I like.
Yeah.
And you get that anywhere, in any state. You can go online, you can Google it, and you can get it if they don't want to leave their house. A lot of people who have this, they can't leave their house.
Yeah,
they have sores all over their face.
Like you said before, we're not telling anyone what to do or giving medical advice. What we're doing here is clarifying what you did and where you access some of these products.
Yes, you can go online. Jean's All Natural Products actually has that product. The Max GXL, you can only buy that online. You can get it through Jean's company as well. The Core Magia Blend, you can only get online. Unless you have a naturopathic doctor who can order it for you.
And what?
You can get it from Jean's All Natural Products as well.
What is it called again, slowly?
A Core Artemisia Blend. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's for parasites. So if they're already on a parasite cleanse and they don't need it.
Okay.
But I like that one because it's real gentle. It's a liquid, and you can just put 1 drop. You can put 20 drops. Whatever you feel like taking.
And you said you could get the menthol crystals just about anywhere, right?
You can get it online. Amazon has it. You can get it anywhere. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see. The Aroma Ace diffuser. You can Google Aroma Ace, and you can find a lot of different companies who carry it.
Okay, so that's the word aroma, and then Ace, ACE.
Yes. Now, a lot of these products, at this point right now, I have the company Jean's All Natural Products, because I don't know if you read my book. I was interviewing him, and he sold me his company. Okay. So for 3 years, I've been helping people with this disease. And I don't cure anybody. I just give them information of how I help myself. Right. And I share it with them, and they can do whatever they want with it. But a lot of these products are on Jean's, G, like in God, E-N-E, Jean's All Natural Products. They can get it there, or they can just Google it. I'm not about money, so I could care less, where people get it. Matter of fact, I will have to sell this company because I've had it already for 4 years. Jean had it for 5, and we're looking for somebody who has the disease to step forward, who's gotten themselves better, who wants to help people. Right. So that's where we're at. So the product what was it? It was Willard Water. You can get that online. just Google it, Willard, Willard, Willard water.
Okay.
And that helps cleanse out some of the debris. Ramona carries an infrared light heating pad. You can get that from her.
That's just a company called Ramona?
From Healing Grapevine.
Okay.
Healing Grapevine is the company. And Opaline Dryoxy. That is, you can Google Opaline. You can only get it on the computer. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the other products like oregano oil, you can go to the health food store. You can pick up oregano oil. You can pick up peppermint oil.
Yeah.
People are making their own little oils and putting them together like clove, oregano.
Okay.
And they're mixing them and they're putting like a drop in their drink and drinking it to help themselves.
Okay. And can they get a lot of this information by going to your website?
Yes, they can go onto my website and they can look on the left-hand column and they can hit the tab that says Mite and Morgellons and you can see all the products. The whole webpage was designed by Jean and it's all products for this disease. I added a ton of products. I added what helped me. Mm-hmm. And so you can see the whole webpage is designed for this illness and all the different ways.
So when you say they should go to your website, which site is that?
Jean's All Natural Products.
GENES, right?
Correct.
All Natural Products.
Yeah. But I could care less where they buy it. They can go to the health food store and get it. They can go online. I mean,
yeah, well, they can at least see what it is by going onto your site.
Yeah, they can go on there and look it up, and then they go to the health food store and get it.
Yeah. And what about how they should get each one of your 2 books?
Okay, they can go on to that Jean's. You can get both of the books. The first book is on enzymes, so you can learn all about enzymes and why they're so good for you. Mm-hmm. And that one is on Jean's All Natural Products, and so is the Natural Ways for Healing Mites and Morgellons. That's on Jean's All Natural Products. But you can also go onto Amazon, and you can get Natural Ways for Healing Mites and Morgellons on there.
Okay.
They have that book as well. They carry it.
Okay.
And you can get it in any bookstore, a Barnes and Noble.
All right.
You can just go in there and order it, and they'll get it for you.
Well, hopefully this is going to encourage and help a lot of people.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
That because I can't be there for everybody, so if I can just give the information out with kind people like you, Richard, who are trying to help people, you're amazing. So keep it up. Well, keep trying to help. And
I think everybody eventually gets to the same point of realizing that, it's really simple. We just have to help each other as much as we can.
Yeah, we're all one. If people can remember the oneness principle, mm-hmm. That's how you affect others, eventually will affect you.
Yeah.
And to practice love. And I know probably people are scared, because they're going to lose their money if they go and squeal on the people who are doing these weird things to the planet.
Yeah.
And but you just have to take a leap in faith and just know that God will be there for you and will help you with abundance.
Yeah, there are ways to make money without damaging anybody.
Yes, and they really have to go back to right action and good principles of following, not follow people who are doing things that are not helpful to us.
Yeah,
and to help the people who are who are trying to be there to make a difference in the world, to make the world a better place.
Yeah, I mean, if people were not willing to do immoral things in order to make money, then the people who had these big plans to destroy everything would not be able to find any helpers.
Correct.
It wouldn't go anywhere.
Yes, it would all end if everybody at once, communicated with each other. And that's what's so great about the computers, we can all communicate with each other.
Yeah.
Fast.
Yeah.
You can send mass emails, and everybody says, we're not going to play that game anymore.
No.
Of destroying the people here.
I know.
We're not playing it. We're going to help people instead.
Yeah, I'm sure they're really unhappy that, we have the internet at this point, but as long as we still have it, we should see how much good we can do with it.
Correct.
As long as we've got time. So, All right. Well, I really appreciate all of your time, and I hope that this will change people's lives for the better. And hold on, and we'll talk for a minute after this shuts off. So.
Okay.
Talk to you soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
I will save the world, then someday get the girl. All the power that I possess couldn't guarantee success.
is Mitch Siegel, Save the World. Mitch's website is www.mitchsiegel.com. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/LostArtsRadio. Please visit our website at lostartsradio.com for Richard's weekly focus articles, as well as lots of other free educational resources on very important issues such as geoengineering, fluoride, GMOs, vaccines, natural health, cell phone and Wi-Fi dangers, and more. We also have links to all of the great independent musicians whose music that we feature on Lost Arts Radio each week. Richard's also featured as the Essene teacher on thelibertybeacon.com. Go there for his articles and audio recordings. And if you like Lost Arts Radio, please consider donating a few bucks to help keep us on the air. We spend untold hours each week to bring you the best show we can with the best guests around. You can find our donate button on our website at lostartsradio.com. And now, back to Richard.
Thank you, Doug. Also want to really thank Diane Olive for spending the time with us in the last section of that discussion that we just had. It was an example of a lot of things that we need to remember. It's not just the technical details of what she found to deal with Morgellons and mites, which is extremely valuable to people that need it, but also setting an example that she didn't just give up and say, well, the doctors can't cure me, so there must be nothing I can do. She had faith in herself and knew that she would be helped if she became determined and creative and just started, studying and exploring and finding everything that she could possibly do. And generally, that approach usually works. And it's a lot better way to spend our time than just feeling helpless. So thanks to Diane for the inspiration to do that with whatever problem or situation that we happen to be dealing with. Don't feel helpless, because there's immense power, creativity, and brilliance inside you that maybe you're not supposed to know about according to the rulers of society these days, but it's still there. And in many ways, it's much higher than the destructive system of rule that we're under right now, is the incredible, limitless healing power and brilliance that's inside each one of us. So I just encourage you to be strong, do what you can to make yourself stronger, more focused, in good shape, take care of your health, because that's the way to become more effective at whatever it is you want to do. So listen, because we talked so much about Morgellons and different aspects of it, and there's obviously some connection between the mites and the Morgellons, and we still haven't really defined what we're calling Morgellons, but Diane was talking about these fibers that appear to be synthetic material coming out of people's bodies. I mean, that's more than just mites, although they look like they go together. So the question is, what is that? And we're not going to try to answer that question completely right now, but we're talking to some really high-powered experts that will be on the show hopefully soon, who have been researching this in great detail to see what exactly is the mechanism for Morgellons. Many people, though, have tied it together in some way with the spraying. It's called geoengineering or chemtrails. And I'm not going to attempt to theorize about the exact connection there, but there certainly appears to be one. So I thought it would make sense, since we're trying to, do as many of these shows as possible with a common theme between the two parts of the show. So I thought, what can we do for the other half of this show? And I thought, well, I used to be one of the hosts on Geoengineering Watch Radio, which is a really good show that's still going on. I think they're on Blog Talk. And Russ Tanner and Dane Wigington were the two other excellent hosts on that show. And Russ Tanner, who has the site globalskywatch.com, and the other site that Dane and the people working with him is geoengineeringwatch.org, full of incredible information on both of these sites. So Russ accepted my invitation to come on for the discussion that we're about to have. He's got a lot of really interesting information gathered over many years on what actually is geoengineering, including some details that we'll go into on the spraying itself and what the trails are and are not in the sky that you can see, having to do with the kind of engines that modern jets are actually using. So I wanted to kind of segue into a more general geoengineering focus, because we're going to be going beyond that into very specifically in the near future what's going on with Morgellons. But before we get to that sequence, let's talk with Russ and find out more right from the beginning on up, from the spraying mechanism forward, into the reasons for this going on, motives, what we can expect in the future, and what Russ has had to deal with his ultra sensitivity to the fallout from the chemtrails that he's dealing with. And I think this will tie together really well with what we were talking about with Diane. So here's Russ, and then I have some things I really want to go over with you when I'm done with Russ. So enjoy the discussion with Russ Tanner, and I'll talk to you right after that.
Okay, welcome everybody. This is Richard Sachs, broadcasting for Lost Arts Radio, and we are incredibly fortunate tonight to be able to talk for a while with our friend Russ Tanner, who I was privileged to meet and work with when I was one of the hosts on Geoengineering Watch Radio, which is still going on, and he's going to tell us about that. But also, remember that one of our interviews was with on the subject of how to overcome a combination of mites and Morgellons. And so Morgellons is often associated, in many people's opinion, with geoengineering, or what's commonly called chemtrails. And, later on we'll probably have a really high-powered Morgellons expert on the show, but we're not ready with that yet. So I want to get more into just the general health aspects of chemtrails, and I know Russ has a lot of insight on that and more experience than he would really want to have. So we're going to get a lot more perspective on what we started opening up last week. So welcome, Russ, and thanks for taking time out to do this with us.
Oh, it's great to be here, Richard. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So, as usual, what the pattern that's kind of developed in these discussions is that it's really easy to talk to the people that already know what we're talking about. But what's, in my opinion, needed even more than that, even more than giving support to the people who know about these issues, is the people who are listening but really don't know anything about these things, or even that they're going on. And I want them to be fully included in the discussion. So what I'd like to do is go back and start before you had any involvement in anything to do with geoengineering or chemtrails, and let them know how you discovered that they were happening and then what they are, because the vast majority of the population actually doesn't know that they are going on, or even what they are when they're referred to. They just know that there are these crazy conspiracy theory people that believe that something bad is happening in the sky. So I'd like to take the real basics and kind of go up step by step to where you eventually ended up having more involvement with the whole issue.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, this started for me very suddenly. It happened one day. I remember the day it happened. This was in November 2005. I lived in a place called Jamestown, New York, and I was just living my life. I had a small business with 3 employees that all worked out of my home. Mm-hmm. And one afternoon, I started smelling something in the air and tasting a salty metallic taste that just overwhelmed me. And my sinuses started burning. I got a headache. I couldn't think straight, had terrible inflammation, joint pain, and muscle pain, and I did not know what was going on. What I did know, Richard, was that something was in the air. And I knew something was in the air because I could taste it and I could smell it. And it came on at the same time that all of my pain and suffering came on. And so naturally, I looked outside and I saw big trails across the sky that were obviously made by jets. And I had seen these a couple times in the previous months over Jamestown, but not like this, just crisscrossing the sky.
Okay.
So I felt so bad I had to cancel our employee meeting that night. I got online on my computer and searched, immediately found Clifford Carnicom's website and found some other websites that covered this issue. And because of my background in researching government corruption, I said, aha, this is what they're doing. They're releasing something from the sky. I didn't have a lot of barrier in accepting that the government would do this because I do have a background in researching government corruption historically. And so I had no barrier accepting that this could actually happen. And I knew it was happening because I could taste it and smell it. A couple of my employees could actually taste it, but they didn't have the severe reactions that I did. And that was the day that I was introduced to geoengineering, chemtrails, whatever people choose to call it.
Yeah, I know that this is, what it makes me think of is when the government used to do massive spraying of DDT, just fogging whole areas, and, telling everybody that that was totally safe. So, I mean, the first thing that you may have thought of before you looked up in the sky is that maybe there's some kind of insect eradication program going on and you got stuck in the middle of that or something, right?
Yeah, it is amazing that, if you did everything in your life that the government said is safe, you wouldn't live a long life. and that's pretty much par for the course. So, the poisons in vaccines are safe. The EMF from smart meters are safe. Injecting poisons into the groundwater, our water supply, that's perfectly safe as well.
Yeah.
And the list goes on and on of safe things that the government assures us are very safe.
Yeah, so you were already familiar with that by the time you looked up in the sky, I guess.
Absolutely. And when I looked up in the sky and saw this, and I went online and saw that a lot of people began reporting this the previous 5 or 8 years, I said, aha, obviously they're releasing something from the air. This is interesting. I'm going to start observing. And I was in a lot of pain at that time. Okay,
now I have to interject one idea, and that's that in conversations I've had with personnel at the National Weather Service, they totally assure me that those are called contrails, and they are water condensation out of the exhaust of jets, and you definitely should not worry about it. Everything is fine, and there are no problems, and just relax. Everything's okay.
I love this subject of contrails. This is, another thing that uniquely equipped me to apply some common sense to this issue. And I believe people should use their own senses of observation before they start believing their government. Use your own common sense. If there's mercury in a vaccine, and it is universally accepted and known that mercury is poisonous, then you should apply common sense to the situation and decide how to handle that. In the same way, I am a lifelong sky observer. I've watched the sky my entire life. I have collected pictures of jets and rockets from the time I was in elementary school and had accumulated thousands of pictures. And out of all of those pictures and all of those years watching the sky and even living on military bases, lived in Fort Polk, Louisiana for a while when I was young, lived in some of the busiest airspaces in the world, the Tampa Bay area. You'd never look up without seeing a jet in the sky. If you drive down to Tampa, which I frequently did, the jets were just lined up in a row to land. Very busy, beautiful airport down there. Lived in Rockville, Maryland a few years, near Washington, not far from Washington, went into Washington, D.C. frequently. And in all of the sky watching and all the traveling across the United States, I used to travel from New York to Florida by air yearly when I was younger, flown out west, drove out west several times, always watched the sky. So I have a long, long history of watching the sky and from the ground, collecting pictures. And in all of those events, all of that time that I spent watching the sky and collecting pictures, I have never seen a trail come out of a high bypass turbofan engine. That's where the common sense starts.
Okay, most people have no idea what that kind of engine is, so why don't you explain that in layman's terms?
Absolutely. High bypass turbofan engine is the type of engine that is used on all large military and all commercial jets. That is the engine that looks like a cylinder, a metal cylinder, and if you look in the front, you generally see a rotating fan in the front.
Mm-hmm.
That fan spins and it pushes air through the cylinder, just like a Coke can, if you were to put a little fan inside a Coke can. The engines are properly called ducted turbofans because that can is called a duct. And when you put a fan in a duct, it generally is more efficient. So that's why they do that. So really, what that type of engine is, it's just a prop in a duct, and the engine that drives it, which they call the power plant,
Mm-hmm.
is called a turbine. And that turbine engine resides on the center axis of that engine. And that's what actually burns the jet fuel, which is essentially kerosene.
Okay.
And about 15% plus or minus, depending on the engine, of the exhaust of the engine is burnt kerosene.
Mm-hmm.
And when kerosene burns, it emits a black carbon soot. That is the vast majority of what you see emitted. If you go to any airport and you watch jets taking off, you'll see a faint black carbon soot, and you can smell it. It's got a very distinctive odor in the air.
So it's the same thing that comes out of a home kerosene heater, right?
That's exactly right. Especially if you turn it on too high, you'll see that black carbon soot emitted.
Yeah.
And that's right. You don't see huge plumes of water. You don't see wetness all over the airport runways. You don't see moisture building up on the windows of the airport when you're looking out at the jets taking off and landing. You don't see any of that. What you see is a faint black carbon soot coming from those high bypass turbofan engines.
Let me ask you something to make sure I understand you now. Basically, the way you've explained this is it sounds like this is very similar to a propeller airplane, except the propeller is encased in a cage that's around it. But other than that, the engine's turning what looks almost like a propeller, and you've got air going through it. I mean, what's the major difference? Why do jets go faster?
Yeah, you're exactly right. It is like a propeller engine. Now, most prop engines that are not ducted turbofans, when you see a propeller on a plane or a larger commercial jet, that's usually driven by pistons. It's usually a piston-driven engine. That's not always the case, but traditionally that's very often the case. On these jets, you have a turbine, a jet turbine engine. Now, 70 or 85% of the air passes right around the outside part of the engine and doesn't even get burned. It isn't combusted with kerosene. It just gets blown through the duct out the back of the engine. Only 15% plus or minus of the air that enters gets combusted with kerosene.
So is that what high bypass means, is that most of the air is unaffected?
That's exactly right. In the old days, like on the original Boeing 707s, they used what's called a low bypass turbofan, which is where they had a smaller amount of air going around the turbine, the power plant in the middle of the turbine, because it was more efficient than actually having no bypass air. And then later, as technology developed, they realized that, wow, hey, if we actually use more bypass air, it makes the engines even more efficient. So they now are to the point where they use about 85% bypass air.
You mean that they don't use it, right? I mean, they let 85% just go through.
Right. The engines are designed to bypass about 85% of the air and combust about 15%.
Okay, and the rest of it is the ideal mixture with kerosene to get the most power out of burning it, right?
Absolutely, because one of the major concerns of aircraft companies, of carriers, commercial carriers, is they want to get the most bang for their buck. They want to be able to fly as far as they can with as little fuel usage as possible. Right. So those engines are designed to have the maximum air to fuel ratio, so they burn as little fuel and generate as much power to generate that peak efficiency.
Okay, and that the efficiency actually is best when they get up high in the air, right? It's not very good during the low part.
Absolutely. If these engines were going to produce these plumes, these 200, 300-foot plumes that spread out to many city blocks within seconds worth of condensation, they would do it during their most inefficient period of flight, which is takeoff.
Right.
But yet, as I said a minute ago, at the airport, you don't see these huge, enormous plumes of condensation coming out of the back of the jets. You just see fine carbon soot.
So the way they're burning, one of the end products is not water vapor, right? Is that what you're saying?
Well, no, I'm saying, they actually do have some water vapor. Now, this is one of the arguments and this opens up a whole new can of worms, because there is a disinformation campaign trying to convince the children in the public school system and the public at large that these plumes coming out of these engines are water vapor. This is what the disinformation is trying to tell the public. But what and indeed, one of the side products, one of the byproducts of kerosene combustion or most fossil fuels is water. Okay. The problem is what these people are telling, what these disinformants are telling the public, is grossly misstating the scientific facts. They are stating that the primary output of combustion of kerosene is water vapor. And that's simply not true. When you have a high nitrogen atmosphere with lower oxygen, lower carbon dioxide, as we do, the science changes. So they're skewing. They're lying about the science, and they're trying to say, hey, this is an ideal 100% combustion situation with no impurities, no nitrogen, pure oxygen, and saying this is what would happen. You would just get water vapor. But that's not what our atmosphere is made of. It's not even close to that. So what we see at the airport is what really comes out of those engines is the black carbon soot.
Okay, and then less of the soot comes out at high altitude, right?
Well, right. When you're flying at your highest efficiency, your fuel-to-air ratio is at its lowest, so you're using the least amount of fuel for the maximum amount of propulsion that you're generating. Mm-hmm. Then you're going to be putting even less carbon soot and less water vapor out of the back. Very, very little.
Okay, all right.
Which is why, and Richard, this matches up historically. This is why, as a skywatcher, I've had pilots call me. I have known many people. I know people who fly, and this is why in all my history of observation, I have never seen a plume come out of a high bypass turbofan. Why? Because they don't produce them. Okay. They don't naturally produce them. So we have to ask ourselves, what is coming out of these engines?
So the water vapor that does come out is so small that it's irrelevant, basically.
Absolutely. It's very, very small amount of water vapor is generated. What the primary component you see is the black carbon soot that you see at the airports. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I wanted to take so much time on that is that there's, as you say, the public is supposed to believe that the jets all over the sky, as the Weather Service recently told me, all of that is water vapor, and that's why they have the term contrails, short for condensation of water. And what you're saying is that there is no such thing as a contrail in this kind of airplane anyway.
In this kind of jet engine, these engines do not produce contrails. They don't produce contrails. The public disinformation that is being produced by military contractors, being paid indirectly by your government-paid taxes, trying to convince the public these are contrails is a lie. It's an absolute lie, which is why all of us who are not young anymore remember the skies and have never seen trails come out of engines. Now, there's one little exception I need to say, just to be intellectually honest. Right. There was an old design of high bypass turbofans called water injection engines. They used water injection as a means to add momentum, to add propulsion energy. So they would actually inject water into the engines. These were models such as the SPAY. One of the most common ones is the SPAY 512. That's a type of jet engine.
Is this adding the principle of the steam engine, basically?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
You're adding, because you have more mass going out, wherever there's an action, there must be an equal and opposite reaction. So they inject water into the engine, and that water combusts, makes steam, and blows out the back. And those type of engines, the most famous one, or one of the most famous ones, is called the Spey 512. It was used on a British-made aircraft called the BAC 111, and there's only about 50 of those in service, primarily in Europe right now. And even those engines that use water injections will almost never actually produce trails at high altitudes. And even when they do, these trails are very, very short, so short and so faint, you typically won't see them from the ground. So this is just a very, very tiny percentage of air traffic that you will see with the potential. Rarely will they produce, but once in a while they may produce a very faint trail of ice crystals once that water freezes when it flies at high altitudes. But that is the only exception.
Okay, interesting. Good. Okay, so
those engines, I should add this, Richard. I should add that those engines, those water injection engines, have not been made for a long time. They're not manufactured anymore. They're not put on commercial or military aircraft. That technology is obsolete, and it's very rarely seen these days, except, like I said, 50 jets in Europe, the BAC 111, for instance.
Okay, so now let's go back to when you looked up at the sky and what you were doing after that.
Okay, I looked up at the sky. After smelling and tasting this stuff in the air and suffering symptoms, terrible inflammation, looked online and very quickly found informative websites explaining that these were intentionally injected aerosols that were falling to ground level.
Okay, so tell people what an aerosol is.
An aerosol is a tiny particulate. So when you have a volume of air, if you mix that air with tiny particulates and expel that into the atmosphere, that cloud or that mist that you see of solids, an aerosol usually consists of tiny liquids or liquid droplets or solids. That's what an aerosol is. Okay,
so at this point, what we know is that, and I say this really for everybody to pay attention to and really digest, is that if you see these big white trails coming out of high altitude jets, basically none of it is water vapor, so you can forget the term contrail. That's false. It's not applicable to these modern jet engines, and what's coming out is very small particles of some kind of solid matter, right?
Well, here's the great irony, is that the term contrail was usually applied to the concept of a small trail of condensation that you would see coming off of a wing in an area where, if you were in a high lift condition, like if you were coming in for a landing and you pitch back and you create a lot of vacuum on the top of a wing.
Yeah.
And if there is there has to be certain conditions. There has to be a lot of vacuum on the top of the wing, and you have to be in a relatively high humidity condition. In that type of situation, you'll see a little trail or vapor form on the top of the wing, and this is generally not something that you'll ever see sustained for any period of time, because these jets are not made to sustain that type of lift, that type of vacuum above the wing. You will see this usually with fighter aircraft. If you see them bank, turn, or pitch back really hard, you'll see the trails start to form off the tip of the wings. That is traditionally what we call a contrail.
Okay. Did you ever see the movie Avatar?
Yes, I did. Yep.
Do you remember when the big ship was approaching where they were going to put everybody down, and they had a shuttle that left it, and it started heading toward the planet? And I guess they were showing everybody that, contrails are universal. But even before it reached the atmosphere of the planet, it had these massive trails coming off the wings like you're talking about.
Right. And in situations, scientifically speaking, if we're going to be intellectually honest, which we certainly are, contrails can form in those high vacuum situations. And I'll give people a quick example. When I was in my junior high school science class, we took a glass jar, put it upside down on a piece of rubber, and we evacuated the air out of it. And when you made a really strong vacuum, you would see a little bit of a cloud form because the water that was in the air in that space could no longer be held or could no longer had enough pressure to dissolve the particles into little tiny particles. So they started to condense, and you would see a little faint cloud inside that jar. As soon as you open the valve and the air rushed back into that jar, that vapor disappeared instantly. It was gone.
Okay.
It dissipates into the air pressure immediately. It was instantaneous. And that's what happens behind a wing when there's a high vacuum on top of the wing during really hard pitch. And generally you don't see this on commercial jets. There are a few videos on YouTube that show this on really, really wet days when they're coming in for landings. You'll see that happen above the wing.
Okay.
But that's rare.
If it's for the reason that you mentioned, it would also be very short-lived, because as soon as it escaped the vacuum zone over the wing at the angle that's causing it and got into the regular atmosphere, it should disappear immediately, right?
Well, it usually does. Now, there are situations where it won't. There are situations where you'll see condensation form at the tip of the wing or over the wing, and you'll see it actually persist, because if that gets condensed and then what the air pressure doesn't rise quickly enough, then that condensed water can maintain a more dense state. The water particles can remain larger. So it is possible. And again, you'll see this if people want to look this up on YouTube. You will see that wing tip or wing vortex condensation trails can form. They usually don't persist, but they sometimes do, if we're going to be honest. But we're talking about the vacuum, the high vacuum behind or at the end of wingtips here.
Okay, not out of engines and not out of special nozzles or anything like that.
Not out of engines, because we don't have a vacuum behind an engine.
Right.
Besides all the other reasons, you have very high pressure zone behind an engine.
Okay, so when you were feeling the effects of whatever you were breathing, how did you find out what might be in that spray that you were observing?
Well, the first thing I did is I started searching out lab tests that people had done and posted online who had been exposed to this for a previous few years. Now, fortunately, in Jamestown, they started this later than in most other areas of the United States. But when they started it with a vengeance. So I found lab tests, and people were most often testing rainwater. Sometimes they were doing soil tests and other types of tests like tree bark. Animal manure is also very helpful. Soil tests are not always relied upon so heavily, because there are things in soil that make them a little harder to control. But when you look at rainwater, that is really an indication of what's going on in your air. And people were coming up with especially large amounts of aluminum. Mm-hmm. And yep. And the funny thing is that when I tasted this salty metallic taste in the air, it actually tasted like salty aluminum. And somebody might ask, how do you know what aluminum tastes like? Or how do you know what copper tastes like?
Right.
Yeah, being a sensitive person like myself, I've been in machine shops. I've done machine work myself. Not that I'm a machinist, but just a handyman. Mm-hmm. And when you put that dust in the air, when you put aluminum dust, it has a particular flavor that I never forgot. If you put copper or iron or different types of metals, chrome or whatever it is in the air, you will see that every one of these metals has a unique flavor to it. And so I remember those flavors. And so I know that this salty metallic taste was like salty, it was like a blunt, the very first type I experienced was like a blunt metallic taste. Like aluminum, but it was actually a little different than aluminum at first. But later on, other types were introduced that taste exactly like aluminum.
Okay, so you must have wondered, what's going on and why would anybody go to the trouble of spraying metal in the air? This sounds a little weird.
It was funny for me because having the background, I had studied for, at that time, about 15 years previous, to 2005, I had studied government corruption and was very fascinated by the fact that the government got away with so much. That really fascinated me because the general public was so busy with other things and so distracted and so uninterested.
Yeah.
So when they did this, it didn't surprise me to start finding people coming up with ideas about why the government is doing this. And when you did a little more research, you can find out that some of the politicians who were elected in office or appointed by those who were elected were eugenicists who believed in population reduction. Some had written books talking about that. And when you did more research, you find people like Frederick Henry Osborne, from the mid-1900s, who was appointed by the president to high positions at the time, and he was like head of the Eugenics Association. Just amazing. It's amazing to discover that the idea of depopulating the earth has been around and very popular among politicians for decades, and eugenics, specifically even eugenics, has been very popular among politicians, elected or non-elected, and the public just doesn't know about this. But a little bit of research starts turning this up and starts making you wonder what the purpose of the spraying could be.
Yeah, I think, when you're talking about this sort of thing, it becomes clear why not too many people know about this, because I don't remember eugenics being talked about on, the evening news and mainstream news channels too much, except maybe that's what was wrong with Hitler. But, the United States government has only been involved in things to protect you and do good, and pretty much like, the creed that Superman made famous about, what was it, truth, justice, and the American way. And also we saw Matt Dillon as the typical sheriff and Chuck Norris as the Texas Ranger, and all the authority figures, they're all selfless and good. So how in the world can this have anything to do with something that Nazis would do, which is, if people have even heard of eugenics, I think that's probably where they heard of them.
Well, it's kind of like out of sight, out of mind, I think. They use Hollywood to portray a particular worldview. And people, without realizing it, when that worldview is thrust upon them, the worldview of the American way and the government's trying to do good. And you see that in shows today. You've got detective shows, you have medical shows, you have lawyer shows, and all of these people. And of course, you've got bad apples here in those shows here and there, because of course nobody would believe them if they didn't portray a few bad apples.
Right, but the agency itself always goes and gets rid of those guys.
They always get rid of the bad guys. The bad guys are routed out, and the good guys win, generally speaking, in all of these shows. Yes. And after years and years of watching these things on television, that repetition begins to shape your worldview, even if you don't realize what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, we assume that those things are just given. I mean, they're obviously true, and that, in addition to the ones you said, we have Homeland Security movies where they're saving us from bombs that we never heard of, and they're just working so hard to help us all the time.
Well, exactly, and I'm in going back to Osborne that I talked about a minute ago, Frederick Henry Osborne, who was a eugenicist. This person, people don't hear about this in the textbooks. They don't read about people like this. Mm-hmm. This man was appointed by Roosevelt to chair the Civilian Advisory Committee on Selective Service. He then went on to chair the Army Committee on Welfare and Recreation. He held a lot of high positions, eventually went to work for a major university. But here's how they hide it from the public. He actually played a really critical role in the mid-50s in founding the Journal of Eugenics, the Eugenics Quarterly, they called it. But you see, in the 70s, they changed the name to Social Biology. And
that sounds a lot better. I bet you still most people now who get their world information from the regular news channels, I bet very few of those even know what you're referring to when you say eugenics. It sounds scientific, but I don't think most people know what that means.
Yeah, eugenics. This is generally the process of letting the genetics of the human species select the strongest and killing off the weakest. And if you were to try to engage a process of eugenics, what you would do is you would stress the population. This is typically what you would do, and that would make the weaker ones die off, so that the stronger ones would continue to propagate and flourish, and theoretically that would make the whole race stronger.
So it's like an artificial natural selection, right? I mean, if you look at the word eugenics, I don't remember exactly, but doesn't the prefix EU mean something like good? And so if so, it would be like the belief in trying to help good genes come out to be the whole group.
Exactly. So you're trying to make the good genes win. You're trying to artificially speed up the process of survival of the fittest. And according to our typical traditional moral standards that we have in the world, we care for the elderly, we care for our parents, we care for those who are weak and frail, and we work together to do that. And that's generally thought of as moral. The idea of putting, let's say, for instance, if this was a eugenics-based program, let's run a hypothetical, putting toxins in the air that would kill off the weaker of the population over time is a pristine example of eugenics, if that's what the intended purpose. Even if that is not what the intended purpose of, this would be an implementation of eugenics, intended or not.
Right.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So how did that make you change something in your life, or how did you respond to that realization when you first really got it?
Well, the most dramatic thing that happened to me personally, and this is very personal to me because it ruined my quality of life, the pain and the suffering that I endured every day from that day forward was debilitating. I could no longer sleep at night. I had to sleep during the morning and early afternoon hours. I had 3 employees, 2 of which I supervised, that were directly under me, that would come in at 9 o'clock in the morning. And because the most hard spraying, and this continues today, the hardest spraying happens at night, I couldn't sleep. At least the plumes reach ground level at night, I should be more accurate and say. I couldn't sleep at night. So this affected me profoundly. I couldn't be up during over half of the day that my employees were there to supervise them and work with them on projects. It caused me a tremendous amount of pain. And so it was very personal to me. So what changed in me was that I had to start supplementing. I had to start wearing what I call a wet mask to help me breathe the air. And I started helping to raise awareness with those who already were aware of this before me, among the general public, to help them realize that this is real, this is really happening. And it goes on today where I've had hundreds of people contact me who also smell and taste it. Now, not everybody does, because people have greatly varying degrees of smell and taste. This is scientifically known.
Yeah.
But that was how it changed my life immediately.
Wow. Oh, interesting. So how did you go from there to actually starting to do some specific activity to make this more widely known and maybe eventually get it stopped?
Well, I actually produced several websites. The main website was globalskywatch.com. I produced that website, started accumulating information, started networking with others to learn more and educate myself about what we knew about this program, because obviously it's secret, yet it's in plain sight. Obviously, these jets have access to the airspace, so they must have the permission of the government to do what they're doing.
Right.
This is taking place in most countries of the world, so therefore there is intimate cooperation among the countries of the world in this program. So my goal was to introduce new people who have not heard of this, who are not familiar with it, introduce them to the subject, much like we're doing now, so that they could begin to become active in putting an end to it. So
Yeah.
that's, yeah.
So this is some kind of, I mean, just hypothesizing here from what you can see and the sample testing that's been done from what falls to the ground. This and the fact that it's going on without being stopped by any kind of authorities. This must be cooperative action at the top levels of government and global corporations, and maybe above that, right? Or else it wouldn't be going on.
Absolutely. This is a consortium of government, military contractors, airline contractors. The airspace is being shared. It's being used by permission. It's being done in many, many countries around the world. Mm-hmm. There are companies, corporations that are contracted to make. One of our whistleblowers especially have talked about the powdered barium and aluminum being loaded onto the planes. Mm-hmm. Okay. The material safety data sheets did not have the manufacturers listed, which is illegal, which is what started raising red flags.
Wow, that's interesting.
So this is the private sector. This is the military-industrial complex working together with the governments of the world to put this stuff in the air. So it's a very complex and very widely implemented program.
Yeah, I guess one of the things that brings up, in case this is true, and it looks like there's a lot of evidence from what you're saying that it is true from people speaking out inside the system, the question is, when government is involved in what could be major crime against humanity, apparently it's not so obvious what to do about it because it's still going on.
Well, absolutely. And I mean, the government has a long history of testing. They call it testing poisons against the public. And we have that on our website. We have a whole list of government testing that was done secretly. The public was not informed about it. And cadmium sulfide and other toxins, biologics, virals were tested against the public. And so what we're seeing today, for instance, I did a water test here in Maine, a rainwater test, and we have 600 micrograms of aluminum per liter in rainwater. Well, the EPA says we shouldn't have more than 50 in drinking water. So we have 6 times more aluminum in rainwater than should be allowed in drinking water. While in California, they have orders of magnitude more than that aluminum in their rainwater.
So some areas are getting hit a lot harder than others, right?
Some areas are being hit much, much harder. California especially is being hit hard. And also this affects the weather, because when you put these little particulates in the air, these little particulates are what form raindrops. When moisture gathers around these little particulates, it's called a condensation nuclei. The air, the water in the air will condense around these particulates, and when enough water condenses, it'll fall as rain. Well, if you
this usually involves dust particles floating around in the water vapor clouds that we see as gray clouds for rain, right?
Absolutely. In the natural process of things, there's some dust in the atmosphere, and the natural weather systems utilize that dust to form rain, and this is part of the healthy weather system that this wonderful, beautiful planet produces for us.
So prior to the interaction with the dust particles, what we see as a cloud may be water vapor made up of droplets that are so small, they just keep drifting. They're not heavy enough to fall, right?
Exactly. That's called hypernucleation. When you have too many particulates in the air, water will form around those droplets, around those particulates, those condensation nuclei as they are called, but not enough is available in the air to make them fall. So this is a way you can actually cause moisture in the air to be carried rather than dropped. And this is part of what we believe we're seeing, is we're seeing weather patterns changed and manipulated by hypernucleation of the atmosphere.
Right. Yeah, I remember when I was on the show with you and Dane Wigington on Geoengineering Watch Radio, we would watch normal winter storms come off the Pacific Ocean, and when they'd get a certain distance from California, we'd see all these planes come in and start spraying what I assume is these tiny pieces of metal into the water vapor clouds, and they would drift and flood the eastern half of the country before they could really fall down.
Absolutely. And as someone who can smell and taste this, and I've networked with other people can as well. I have seen a pattern here in Maine where over and over, when an incoming storm was on its way, about 12 hours prior to the storm, they would start spraying what I call the iron aluminum type. It has a taste of iron and aluminum together. Okay. And they would saturate the atmosphere so hard it would just give me headaches. It would make people nauseous and give them terrible headaches. About 12 hours. And then when the storms moved in, guess what? They didn't drop any rain. It looked like it was going to storm. The clouds looked really nasty, like they were going to drop something, but guess what? They dropped virtually nothing. And I saw this happen year after year after year. And even in Maine, our rainfall is way, way below normal now.
Oh, interesting. So it's just all because the droplets are too small, and it's easier for them to keep drifting than to fall down to the ground.
Absolutely. And this surprises people how easy it is to manipulate some aspects of weather. Just by hypernucleating the atmosphere, you can actually make the atmosphere maintain more of its moisture and continue to carry it where it normally would have dropped it.
Okay. And obviously there's a lot of effects of putting these metal particles into the air besides just changing the rainfall, right?
Absolutely. Now, because I'm getting lots of aluminum in the rainwater here, and because the whistleblowers have actually seen aluminum and barium being loaded onto jets manufactured without the manufacturer's names being put on the material safety data sheets in these military operations that this particular whistleblower I'm thinking of actually witnessed, we have a lot of consequences when these two substances, aluminum and barium. Barium is very dangerous to human beings. It can induce heart attacks. In fact, barium sequesters potassium in the human body, and in fact, it's so aggressive that it's used in animal testing to artificially induce heart attacks. Because when your potassium level in a mammal goes too low, it will start with fibrillations and end in heart attacks. Now, aluminum also has many bad effects. It can cause headaches, nausea, neurological issues, digestive issues, joint and bone, calcium metabolism, magnesium metabolism, and all of these things produce a whole array of symptoms, even to the point of strokes, aneurysms, because it can build up. This fine aluminum nanoparticulates can build up in capillaries and cause blockages, which lead to aneurysms, for example, heart attack, stroke, and cancer. And so now we're seeing not only so many people that we know are having these diseases, but we're seeing animal die-offs. We're seeing an insect population across the United States that is somewhere between 20 and 5% of what it should be. Massive insect die-offs, which many people can see. If you look around the house that's around your light, are there as many insects there now as you saw 5 years ago?
Yeah.
I mean, it's
we're
just
seeing
amazing.
a radical decrease in 3 years.
Right, and that's a critical part of the food chain, and that's going to affect us very soon.
So, the people that are somewhat aware of this but not sure of the details or why it's actually happening, they're thinking, well, it must be that the government is just trying to save us from all the terrors of global warming, and that they just forgot that it would ruin the soil and the water and the air as side effects. What do you think about that general line of thought?
Well, if people believe that global warming is occurring, then they would have to think about this. If you are going to saturate the air with dangerous particulates that are going to fall down to the ground and contaminate the water supply and contaminate the soil and cause all kinds of diseases like we are seeing in trees and animals right now based on aluminum, you are not really solving a problem. And in fact, besides the fact that you're going to cause all of this disease and all of this harm to the environment because you're contaminating the environment in the name of trying to save it, when you make the atmosphere more dense with particulates, it actually maintains more heat. So you are actually causing a warming.
Right.
Even though one of the claims of putting aluminum by geoengineers, putting aluminum into the atmosphere, is that it will cause a more reflective atmosphere and it will reflect sunlight away from the Earth. The problem is the increased density of the air and the ionization of the air actually causes it to hold heat in at night, and the net effect is a warming effect and not a cooling effect.
Okay. Yeah, I know. I recently saw something from the United Nations because they had their big meeting in New York trying to speed up the implementation of Agenda 21 by 20 years earlier, even though they also say, that it doesn't exist. But since they are the ones that published it as definitely existing, they're saying that it has to happen before 2030. So they had this gigantic meeting, and in what they wrote for that meeting, it says that global warming is a top priority concern, which would seem to, be a justification that they might be using for all of this geoengineering and the chemtrail spraying.
Yeah, this all opens up a can of worms, meaning that it's hard for people who don't have an intimate understanding of how the government works. But people have to understand that the government acts in its own interest. And when you have government literally being controlled by corporate entities, when you have the government, for instance, the FDA being controlled by the pharmaceutical industry, the agricultural regulators being controlled by the meat producers in the agricultural industry, this is called controlled regulation. And this is what we have in our government today. We have corporate powers that are in control. And they don't want the public to know this, obviously. So not only do they control the government, they buy the media outlets, the mainstream media outlets, so they can make sure that none of this news ever leaks out. You want to control the conversation. Right. And so I urge people to learn about these things, because it's hard to understand that geoengineering or that chemtrails or whatever you want to call this is really happening until you understand how the structure of power works. And once you understand that it operates in its own interest and that those interests are corporate, for instance, the medical industry is profiting from sick people. Well, they want to produce sick people because by curing illness, you're denying yourself business. So you don't want to cure. It's not in your business interest. It's not in your interest at all to cure people. It's in your interest to produce as many sick people as possible.
Yeah, I think one reason that's not so visible to the public is that there are millions of doctors who really feel like they would like to cure illness forever. And right above them is another level of management that may not have the same goals.
Absolutely. And I'm not saying that there aren't a lot of good doctors out there, but what we do see is we see good doctors who don't live very long. We see doctors who have shown statistical dramatic improvements in cancer cure rates. And what happens, the FDA is constantly battling with them, constantly shutting them down. This has happened in the last 100 years over and over and over again, with the regulators working against the general interest of the public, but for the interest of the industry, which is supposed to be regulating.
Yeah, I mean, another aspect of that whole concern is that, at least at the federal level, where there's this cooperation between the government and its agencies and the industries they're supposed to regulate, is that if you put any strength in the Constitution and say that that's still supposed to be the part of the law of the land that regulates and limits what the federal government can do, then it says in the enumerated powers clause that there's only a few things that the federal government can do at all, and that specifically says anything outside that list they can't do. Which means if that's still in force, if we still have the Constitution, that means probably, 98% of what the federal government does is completely illegal.
That's right. What has happened, and I'll give this is the short version, is the executive branch of government has been given emergency powers. And you can look at the War Powers Act, you can look at This is one of the first acts of every president who comes into office, is that they continue this state of emergency. There was a congressional study done a few decades ago that you can look up, that where Congress did a study, and they said that the United States is currently in 3 states of national emergency right now that are perpetuated by every new president that comes into office. I'm not making this up. You can find this right from a congressional study. And every president that comes in perpetuates this state of emergency. And why do they do this? They do this because this state of emergency grants, and this is exactly what this congressional study says, this state of emergency gives the executive branch of government inordinate powers to create agencies, to sequester and to take over industries, to do things that it never would even have close to the power to do. Mm-hmm. So I would encourage people to look this up and learn about how this structure really works, and then things will begin to make sense.
So that could mean, according to what you're saying, that spending billions of dollars to keep the chemtrails going could be completely legal if you assume that state of emergency grants all kinds of unconstitutional powers. The question would be, is it legitimate and legal, even by the arbitrary legal systems that we've got in force, to declare any kind of state of emergency that would override the Constitution, or is that in itself completely bogus and not lawful to do?
Exactly. And I'll get a little bit deep here for a second for those who want to know, the implementation of this tyranny on the American public has been perpetrated through the implementation of the Uniform Commercial Code, which is a code of law that governs commercial transactions throughout the world. And in order for a contract, and this is the pivotal point that backs up what you're saying, Richard, in order for a contract between 2 entities to be considered legal, it must have remedy and recourse. Those are the 2 attributes of a contract. Mm-hmm. What we have today is we have the government contracting with us, and we are voluntarily giving over our power and letting the government do this. And the government is supposing that we are doing this voluntarily. However, a contract is not enforceable if there is not knowledge of the terms of the contract and understanding of the terms of the contract. In other words, most Americans don't know that this is going on. And not just Americans, this is happening in most countries of the world. They have used the same tactic to gain tyrannical control over the people. Mm-hmm. But it's not legal and it's not moral, because the people don't know and understand how this is being done to them. And so the powers that be, the industries that are controlling the governments, are utilizing the ignorance of the people against them, which is not moral. In a moral, civilized society, we're supposed to help those who are weak. If you're a lawyer, you're supposed to help those who are in the courtroom, who do not understand, who are too ignorant of the terms of a contract. So a little bit of deep talk there, but for those who understand what I'm talking about, this is the mechanism, or one of the several mechanisms that have been used to pull the wool over all of our eyes. So if the justification for all of these otherwise illegal activities on the part of government is that, well, it's an emergency, it's a declared emergency, so the Constitution doesn't apply, is there any reasonable basis for saying that, or is that just on its face completely ridiculous to assume there's any conditions in which the Constitution would not apply? That's absolutely correct. There is no condition for which the Constitution should not apply. The declaration of emergency that is declared as usually the very first act of every president, whether they're Democrat or Republican, the very first act is the perpetuation of this state of emergency. And why do they keep perpetuating this emergency? For the reason you just mentioned, so that they can maintain tyrannical powers over the people. They want to subvert constitutional protection. They want to subvert common law protection beyond what they would normally, far beyond what they would normally have the ability to do. So there is no real physical state of emergency. It's simply a lawful state of emergency so that they can implement tyrannical controls through government.
Right, even though actually declaring a state of emergency doesn't really change the fact that the Constitution is what limits government. And the way that it was written was not, well, these are all the rules that limit the federal government unless you decide it's an emergency and then you can drop the whole thing. It wasn't like that. And I think, initially what I was thinking of talking about was the health effects of the chemtrails, but once we've established that they're going on, the spraying is happening, and that it's detrimental not only to human beings but to all life forms in the biosphere, and that it's being done intentionally, then, a better use of time really in understanding, instead of only looking at all the details of how it's hurting our health, is, wait a minute, if it's hurting our health at all, regardless of the details, then why is it still going on, and why can't it be stopped? And in relation to that, the state of emergency is certainly an excuse, although probably not a legitimate one that could be being used. But what about, how does this also tie into what people say, well, the Constitution is not really enforced because there was a bankruptcy on the part of the government in 1933 that none of us know about? I mean, was that real? And if so, how do we know it actually happened? And does it have anything to do with all of this?
Well, I think that these things are being used to pull the wool over the eyes of the public. Bankruptcy that did exist lawfully. You can read about it. You can research about a bankruptcy. And this, of course, is hidden from public view. But see, that in and of itself is unlawful and immoral because you're engaging people in a contract where they don't understand the terms, and therefore it's not enforceable. Yet, they continue to enforce it. So really, Richard, what we have is they have tried layer upon layer to subvert justice and impose tyranny on the people. But at every level, it's not legal and it's not moral. Yet, they continue to do it simply because people are not fighting back.
Well, I guess they're figuring like a bully, that they're so much bigger, they have all the weapons. I mean, really, mass murder type weapons to wipe out whole populations, and lots of practice using them on other countries where they can go in and experiment. They figure there's nothing we can do about it, and I think from what I can tell that they actually hope that people try to resist by force, because then they've got the justification to do the same thing to our population that they do in other countries. So when you look at nonviolent alternatives to make things better, we got thousands of lawyers graduating from law school every year. And is it fair to say that they could be doing something and they're not?
I think that they could be doing something, but it's not in their interest. See, the system is set up to keep those people at that level of the system complacent. The system is designed that way. So if lawyers start talking about constitutional laws, they're going to lose profits. If they're going to start trying to bring that into the courtroom, they probably will lose profits, just like doctors who try to promote cures for cancer. You got Brzezinski, you've got many doctors who have come up with techniques, but they just get harassed. And so you have what you were saying, the bully problem. They will just bully you, or the system just isn't profitable for attorneys who try to do that. So as long as you're in the middle of the system, you don't see outside of it. You don't see the big picture. You just see federal laws and regulations. You don't see the big picture that encompasses this whole system. Right. And that's when you start to be free, is when you can back yourself up and understand that all of this system we live in is kind of like a cup holding water, yet there's a whole world outside of that cup. But we're all stuck in this cup by the bully that keeps us ignorant, or if we try to become knowledgeable, then they just keep us here by force.
Right. And according to Jesse Ventura's stories and other people, the current version of state governments that we have are also heavily dominated by federal influences as well, partly through free money for whatever they want to do as long as they accept all the strings attached for how they have to act, and also just flat out threats if they don't obey. So it sounds like some kind of change has to happen starting at local levels with actual normal people getting into positions where they can make some of these, decisions against the destruction that's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And this even takes place on the city level. The large cities have this same type of thing going on. And I encourage people to watch a movie. It's free. Go on YouTube and search The Corporation Nation, which explains. It's excellent. It's a long movie. But look, if you care about your children, if you care about your life, if you care about freedom, and I certainly think you should, take the time every week to educate yourself. And when you educate yourself, it will profoundly change you.
Yeah.
But you have to be willing to do that. So this is one movie I highly recommend, The Corporation Nation. It's free. Take the time and check it out, and it will back up everything that you're saying, Richard. It'll back
I completely agree. That's a great movie. Clint Richardson made it, and amazing investigation that he's done. And I think one of the main things to kind of start putting a healthier mentality in place of what we're all trained to think is that we're not the helpless, irretrievably idiotic individuals that the power structure wants us to believe, totally dependent on government experts and everything and industries telling us what to buy and what to think. That there's actually, maybe it's sleeping, but there's huge creativity and positive energy dormant in every single individual. And they start breaking out of the programming, get rid of their negative addictions that are self-destructive, and start, reclaiming their actual incredible natural abilities that all of us have. And who knows what could come out of it.
Absolutely. I mean, I have always said this, that the power has always been in the people. And when you make a decision in your life to change your life, and it has to happen one person at a time, it has to happen on an individual level. That's why this is grassroots,
right?
Because you have to decide that you want to become educated. But Richard, when you become educated about this subject, it can be very scary at first. It can be very frightening, but you have to be willing to push yourself through that fear. And when you push yourself through that, you start to believe that you do have the power. You start to realize you don't have to be afraid. You can change your life, and you can have control of this situation. The power has always been in the hands of the public. The reason why we're in this predicament is because the public forgot that.
Yeah, we used to have so many good role models in the early part of this country, and I think a lot of the people that seem to be fearless, and I've known one or more of those people, and it's not that they're not scared. They've just trained themselves to have an opposite reaction to things that they're afraid of. Instead of running away from them, they run toward them. And so as soon as they notice anything hanging over them, it doesn't have to be a person that's confronting you or trying to hurt you. It can be a pattern in your own mind. And when you see this addiction or self-destructive pattern, even a subtle one, as soon as you become aware of it, instead of just, cowering in fear and obeying it or the person that's harassing you, you take completely the opposite approach. And to everybody around you, it looks like you don't know what fear is, but you've just trained yourself to not give into it and to just forget it, go towards it.
How many times, like you're talking about role models, land of the free, home of the brave. Why was that something that applied to America for so long? Because there's a principle behind that. And there's a principle behind everything. And if you learn how these principles work, it's like climbing a ladder. You understand where the rungs are so you can grab out and reach it and use it to empower yourself in your life. The reason why you have bravery and freedom together is because without courage, you will lose your freedom. If you don't have personal courage, every individual, or at least the majority of us, need to have courage and exude that courage in our lives. When we do that, it changes everything. But without bravery, you will lose your freedoms, and we are well into that scenario right now.
Yeah, I think should also extend the invitation to just trying out, what it feels like to be brave. Even if you're afraid, just do it anyway. And some of the people that could do some extraordinary, become extraordinary examples of healing for humanity are people who currently are giving into that negative thought pattern. And, from the people flying the chemtrail jets all the way down to people just carrying out repressive, unconstitutional laws at the city levels, wherever they are. If they're working for destruction on the part of the system, why not look for ways that they could do something a little bit more beneficial? And from their position within, in whatever way they find it, may not even have to be noticed by anybody, but they have an opportunity to do some incredible good.
Don't ever let fear control you. We are living in a system that controls the public by fear. Think of how often you walk through your day, and let's say you want to speak out about something that's important to you. How often do we mute ourselves? Do we squelch our ideas, our thoughts, and our passions because we're afraid? Afraid of what? Rejection by someone else? If we're speaking the truth, if we're doing the right thing, then those who will be important to us will be attracted to us anyway, and
Right.
we will shed those who have different ideas. Things may change, but your life will be better. Don't ever let yourself be ruled by fear.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost in a way like each one of us is the hero or heroine in our own action movie. And we have the complete freedom of choice to decide what kind of character that hero should have.
That's right. And it comes down to a very personal decisions. All of the fabric of society is woven together by every little decision we make. If you have a friend in distress, reach out to them and love them. Don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to make yourself available. And don't think you're wasting your time.
No.
Because that's where it is. That's where the real power is when you pull yourself together in the relationships with the people around you and give yourself to those people in love, in devotion, and don't be afraid to make a sacrifice in your own life to do something good for someone else. And the world will change when people are willing to do that. Your own life will change.
That's right. And that kind of sacrifice is actually the best kind of selfish activity you could do, because it actually immediately starts benefiting you. So it's not like you have to do anything against your own interests at all. You just have to realize a little bit deeper aspect of what your own self-interests really are, which is for everybody to be okay. And if we spend time judging and condemning each other, then we're going to wait to really help somebody until we find somebody perfect, and it's going to be a really long wait. And I think you mentioned love, which is a word that's kind of become a cliche, and there are so many different definitions of it in the romance novels and all these things, and we think of it as somebody that we get maybe enamored of, and it can change into hate or anything else overnight if they do the wrong thing. But there's another kind that's proactive that I think is what you're talking about, and it's a gift that you get to give to everybody, and they don't have to earn it, just for the sake that you want everybody to have it.
Absolutely. What you said a minute ago about acting in your own interest anyway, based on what you just said, and it's true, we have two choices before us. We either act in our own selfish interest, or we act in the interest of others around us, which still benefits us. So we can act in a way that benefits us alone, or we can act in a way that benefits everyone around us and us.
Yeah,
so which way is more efficient? Which way is going to produce a larger, better, more positive result for everybody?
Right. I mean, you can't be selfish or selfless, because I've never met anybody in my whole life or heard of anybody in history that has ever been selfless. But there are people who have the limited self-interest where they think it's them against everybody else, or at least against the bad guys. And then there's others that have a lot deeper wisdom from experience and digesting the experience in a good way, and they realize that their self-interest is in serving everybody the best they can.
And it's interesting what you said about, that's very true. And it's interesting what you said about, you've said this before about language, is that when those tyrants want to come over and control the people, control the population, one of the first things they do is change language. And what we've had happen today is we've had the word love now represents, in most cases, fear. When people have this compelling draw to be near someone and afraid to be without them, that's fear. That's not love, but our understanding is so clouded of that today that people don't know what love really is, and so you end up with confusion.
Yeah, there's no limit to the amount that you can give everybody, especially the people you find difficult. They're the best, exercise in really giving love, not in a arbitrary, fake way, but for real, for nothing. You don't want anything back. What you want is them to feel good, because there's this old law of nature that was before any kind of philosophy or religion was ever thought of. And it says, whatever we give to somebody or do to them comes back to us multiplied. And you can't get around it. There's no trick way to avoid it. And once you start experiencing it, you're not doing it just to obey some law. You're doing it because the way you feel from doing that keeps expanding you and making you stronger and more whole constantly.
It's like an
good addiction.
It's like an upward spiral. And it's interesting that what we're talking about here, we're getting to talking about principles of life. Principles. How does this work? And so people need to have realizations about how these things work. And one of those things that you realize is that everything is connected to everything else. You may go do some act of love and a sacrifice for this person that has no tangible benefit to you that you recognize right away, maybe, but of course it does really on another level as long as you realize it. But nevertheless, you're doing a loving act for someone else. But that ripples, that multiplies, that goes out, and that person will be changed, and it has a huge effect. But here's the point, is did you know that I could be kind of tongue-in-cheek right now and say I think everybody should be paranoid. Everybody should go be paranoid. You know where the word paranoid comes from? It comes from the word parallel, where we get the Latin word parallel, which means to have a relationship with something else. Because two lines that are parallel, they have an intimate relationship because they're right next to each other. They go in the same direction. And the word gnosis, it comes paranoid, paranosis comes from the Latin word for knowledge. So what the word paranoid actually means is you are seeing parallel knowledge. You're understanding how everything is connected to everything else. And isn't it funny that that's another word that became confused into a negative thing? And I'm not saying we should go call everybody paranoid, because that wouldn't be constructive in today's world. But nevertheless, isn't it interesting how words become so confused that the idea of seeing parallel knowledge, understanding how everything is connected to everything else, is so useful. Like I was talking earlier, the rungs on the ladder. When you understand the principles of how life works, it changes you and it makes you able to navigate life so much better and be so much more of a positive influence to other people.
Yeah, I think this is the big secret of where our actual strongest healing energy lies. And that's why, the power structure wants to get us all excited about killing each other, thinking that whoever the other side is bad. But because that keeps you in such a limited lack of awareness of yourself and what you really have. But if you start learning how to give like you're talking about and experience the strength that just flows into you as a result of that, that actually has potential to turn everything around in the way I see it.
Absolutely. And before you can actually implement any principle in your life, you have to have two things. First, you have to have knowledge of the principle, and then you have to have faith. And what I mean by faith is that you have to believe that it might work. You have to have enough hope that maybe this will work. I should try it.
At least to try it, yeah.
At least to try it. And then once you see that it works, give it a good try, and you start seeing, wow, this really works.
That's a definition of real science as well, as that you come up with theories and hypotheses of things that might work or explain everything, and then you try them and just observe what happens.
That's right. And that builds the ultimate outcome of that is it gives you power.
Mm-hmm.
When you have more knowledge and you build more faith, then you have power to navigate where you didn't before, because you understand how things work and you have the courage to implement those principles that you didn't even know existed. But now not only do you know they exist, but you have the courage to walk in them. You have the courage to make a sacrifice for someone else without thinking, oh, I'm missing an hour of work. I could be doing other things.
Right.
Don't let those fearful thoughts catch you up. Say no. This is where the action is taking place. And this is an example I could give people really quickly, is that I'm into music and I love watching good musicians and good singers perform. That's just something that I just enjoy. And let me tell you something, when you see whoever your favorites are, whether it's Martina McBride or Mick Jagger or whoever it is that you like, when you see them on stage and they're singing and you think, oh, something great is happening, forget it. Something great happened years earlier or months earlier or weeks earlier when they were alone in a dark room rehearsing. They were building their skill. They were building their faith. They were building their understanding of how their vocal cords work and how to perform. That's when great things happen. What you see when they're on stage, that's just the result of the great thing that has already happened.
Yeah, it's not genetic and it just happened overnight.
Right? It takes work, but it's more than worth it, because when you exude that faith and you take time to gain the understanding of how life works and how the principles work so that you're not afraid, what you gain from it is orders of magnitude above what you think you might be losing because you're losing an hour of work not helping your friend or devoting yourself to your family or something.
Then none of these things are actually sacrifices, because you get so much more back. But we've got about a minute, so if somebody, I would just say that for every single individual that's listening to us, they have so much overwhelming power for good hidden inside them. All they really have to do is figure out how to uncover it, and that starts with wanting to explore and find it. But I would say also, I don't want to take the whole minute, so if they're just overwhelmed with all this deep stuff we've been talking about, what do you want to leave them with as a final couple of thoughts in the last minute here?
Don't be afraid when you feel that fear, because this is the way it often works. You'll have an inspiration inside you to go, oh, I want to go help that person. I want to go do this good thing. And then immediately you have all the negative thoughts. You have all the doubts. You have all the fears. Fight the fears, resist the fears. We do have a battle within us to get rid of those fears and to act in faith, to act in love, to act according to the principles of the way things work. And I just ask that you fight that fight, because it will magnify in your life into something, an order of magnitude beyond what you're going to gain if you keep holding on to those things that those fears. Don't act on fear. Keep acting in love and in faith.
Yeah, nothing better that I could add to that at all. Thank you, Russ. It's been a really quick time with you, and a great pleasure to share your insights, and I hope that you'll be back for further installments with us in the near future.
Anytime, always a pleasure to talk with you, Richard.
All right. Wow, that's pretty deep. A lot of the things that Russ mentioned to us on not only geoengineering, but the deeper meaning of how to understand what's going on with geoengineering and how it relates to everything else happening in the world right now. I want to get into that for the rest of the time that we've got, which is only a few minutes. But before that, I'm on the verge of forgetting that we got an important message from a friend, Jesse Bogdanovich. I don't know if any of you guys know him or have heard much about him, but I want to give you a way to look up something that he's about to do. Jesse is Jesse. Bogdanovich is Bogdanovich. And go to a search engine like, I don't like Google, but Startpage is a good one, or whatever else you want to use, and put in Jesse Bogdanovich Cruise, Cruise, like a cruise on a ship. Or you can also put in Raw Vegan Cruise. Vegan is Vegan, and you'll see the whole thing about what he's reminding us that he's about to do. This is not a paid ad. This is just a note from a friend. And the reason that I think it's important, on the surface, it's a very luxurious cruise in the Mediterranean, and this is going to be, a super fun experience for everybody involved. But it's much more significant than that. Jesse was paralyzed by a vaccination, and we've had a lot of great guests on the show, nurses and doctors and other people brave enough to talk about the fact that vaccines, as far as any of us can see, and this is a huge taboo to even be willing to say this, I can't find any instance at all in their history where they've ever prevented a single disease. And not only that, they've started and spread many deadly epidemics. And if you want to know some more details of this, and you're strong enough to absorb it, go to YouTube and watch a documentary by our friend Clint Richardson, and it's called The Story of Lethal Injection, Lethal, L-E-T-H-A-L, Injection, The Story of Vaccination. This video's also on our website, lostartsradio.com, and you'll see a little bit about what vaccination's really about and why doctors recently were all murdered to try to expose this, because they had real evidence, and that could never be allowed. So the truth is that lots of people, especially kids, get horribly harmed, paralyzed, or killed by vaccines, and the doctors are trained to say, oh, that's just a minor statistic, and that it's doing so much fantastic good that that's just a small price to pay for so much benefit. I'm totally open to finding out that's true, but so far what I've seen from a really unbiased point of view, that all I want to know is what's true, no matter what anyone else is saying or advertising, all I see is harm. And it's very, very difficult for people to say this because of our training, but Jesse's one of those kids that got paralyzed. Except for one thing, he's not paralyzed anymore. We've been talking about and hinting about let me say first that the doctors who recently got murdered because they showed that the apparently permanent damage from vaccines is largely or maybe almost completely reversible. You're not supposed to know about that, okay? I mean, it's absolute taboo. And so they were all killed, but, we interviewed people who were involved in that whole thing and did the synthetic interview with Dr. Molden, which everybody should watch, in my opinion, or listen to. It was just audio. And, or go to YouTube and look up Dr. Andrew Molden, listen to everything that he said. He proved that every vaccine causes brain damage. That's why he had to die in 2013. This is real heavy-duty power structure that we're playing with here. And they just figure it's a, most efficient business plan to just kill everybody who tries to expose what they're doing. But if everybody becomes educated, then it's difficult to kill everybody at once. And in any case, the reason I bring that up is that Jesse got paralyzed by a polio vaccine, and then he recovered, and the way he recovered was totally natural means. He did not need a high-tech natural substance. He used raw food and especially fasting. And this is very, very important. If you have anybody in your family that was paralyzed by vaccines, find out about what Jesse Bogdanovich did. And the reason that this little cruise that he's running now is important is that if you really want to learn from him and be around him instead of getting an hour of consulting or that sort of thing, you might want to consider going on this cruise, because you get to be with him for more than a week, one-on-one. And if you have an interest in your family or for yourself about finding out how he discovered to reverse vaccine damage completely, I think you should look at it, and that's why we also put his ad as a banner on our website, lostartsradio.com, and I think you might find it quite interesting to go there and read the whole full page on Jesse's website that our banner links to. I want people to have access to teachers of this quality who don't teach because they memorize something. They teach because they experienced something and then did what they had to understand it. So anyway, enough on that. But I go to our website or go to a search engine and look up Raw Vegan Cruise, Jesse Bogdanovich Cruise, and see what you can find out. And they're offering some kind of a discount price for people that, sign up early enough. But even without the discount, it could be worth it if you learned something that could save a family member. So that's the reason for that. It's not just luxury. So anyway, chemtrails, what this discussion was with Russ that we just finished. There's a lot of contention within the so-called geoengineering or chemtrails community talking about who's good and who's bad and who did something bad in their life so they shouldn't be listened to. Or this is just such total nonsense, because it doesn't matter if it's true or not. What matters is people are getting sprayed with poison, toxic metals, possibly things that cause Morgellons, all kinds of disease organisms. I mean, it looks like not only like Russ knows that the recipes are highly varied for who knows what different purposes that all fit together, but it's way, way beyond something to change the weather. Okay, that's one little part of it that happens to be deadly in itself. And the cause of most of the global weather disruption is definitely geoengineering and chemtrails, but that's one part of the picture. It's also destroying all the soil for plants to grow in. It's destroying the soil for trees, for forests to grow in. It's polluting all the water. It's making people breathe poison. These are not side effects from trying to control the weather. I mean, I don't even know what to say about that. That's so obvious. This is a highly organized, very complex program that's being run from top-level power structure positions at the very top of the pyramid-like power structure. And it's not really engineering, except in the sense that it's trying to change the entire biosphere to basically not be suitable to normal life on Earth at all. Okay, that's quite a bit more than just changing the weather. Changing the weather in a lethal fashion is part of it, but you need to see how it ties into GMOs. We're going to find out the details of Morgellons when we get the Morgellon scientists on. You know how it's tying into poisoning all life forms and causing, rapid acceleration toward extinction. This is a totally malevolent plan, and for us to be, fighting each other over who's a good or a bad person, this is really dumb, guys. This is really, really dumb. Okay, that's a much higher priority problem to deal with. And if people don't drop their relatively petty differences and deal with the big issue, they don't have a chance, which is why the power structure wants us to fight each other. So if, and I don't think you can do this by force, by fighting with the power structure, anything like that. It's mostly misguided individuals working for it who think they're saving humanity or just, earning money for their family, whatever. But force fighting are not going to do it, in my opinion. However, if you put your energy on harmony with other people and learning what your hidden abilities may be, so that you clear your mind and don't just walk around in a fog, because you can't do anything useful in a fog. And all of us start out that way. Most of humanity is that way. And if we let them give everybody all the vaccines that are planned and all the GMOs, and USDA is trying to promote GMOs as fast as they possibly can. So this gives you a clue where government's coming from. They want you compromised and eventually eliminated. Okay, so go in the opposite direction. Learn about health, which is what this program is supposed to be, one helping factor to give you ideas how to learn about those things. And we'll be doing a lot more specifics about that in the future. People like Jesse have discovered a lot, and so have I, actually. I haven't talked much at all about my own work over the last 5 decades in health research, but I'm probably going to need to do that in the near future. Learn about health, learn about how you don't need the healthcare system unless you get in an accident, and the same thing that heals your body will clear your mind, and the same thing that clears your mind will put you in a place where you can do the internal work that almost no one talks about or really knows what it is. But that's to access long forgotten talents and abilities that every single one of us had that are not, what do you call it? Covert. They're not occult. They're just who you really are. You're not ever supposed to discover that, because if you did, you would become so powerful for healing and for good that the power structure wouldn't have a chance to finish its agendas. So they want to inject you with things and make sure that you're addicted to all kinds of medical drugs and things like that, so that you won't find out who you are. So find out who you are, learn, and then help others. I really appreciate your being here and look forward to sharing again with you at the next show.
I am hearing you above the noise. Turn and run to you. I have no choice. I'm choosing to trust in love over logic, following the sound of your voice. 'Cause I am hearing you above the din.